Inside a dungeon full of monsters of all kinds, powerful humans face these creatures. Even surrounded by countless enemies, their powers are more than enough to defeat them, until a beast appears, far stronger than any they had faced before. It's almost 10 times bigger than the smallest ones, and wields a massive weapon. Seeing this, an experienced warrior shouts for Yudo to get out of there as fast as possible. The boy, the group squire, follows the order, trembling with fear. But before he can escape, the monster's first attack is aimed directly at him. Unfortunately, he takes the hit head-on, gets thrown backward, and slams into a wall, badly injured. The veteran criticizes his lack of strength, but without wasting time, charges forward and takes down the threat with a blow so strong it pierces through the monster, killing it and leaving it on the ground. Right after, a magical stone materializes from within the creature. Everyone is impressed and celebrates the victory. With the battle over, the veteran thanks the porter for his work. The squire is Yudo Kiroshima, an F-class adventurer. This time he truly thought he was going to die. But his resilience is like that of a cockroach. The adventurer then gives the protagonist a bonus, a single small coin, and while it might seem like a nice gesture, it's not even enough to pay for one day's worth of food. That's why Yudo believes that one day, everyone who mocks him will regret it. In the future, he will become strong and reach the rank of a high-class adventurer. One day, dungeons like this began appearing all over the world, and around that same time, humanity awakened to magic. That's how the adventurer profession was born. They are the ones responsible for defeating monsters in exchange for money. However, even with the rise of these powers, Yudo remained the weakest of them all. First of all, don't forget to leave a like and a comment, because it really helps us spread the video. Now, let's continue the story. Back in the dungeon, the group stands before a massive gate that seems to lead to the boss's room. They say that if they clear this level, they'll reach their financial goal for the month. For some, it will be the first time in 10 years with the Black Guild that they'll earn so much money. But the veteran tells a teammate not to badmouth the guild in front of the rookies. After all, it's such a good place that even a failure like the squire can work there. Remembering that, several start laughing. Since his failure is so obvious, it's impossible not to. Until one of them, still laughing, asks them to stop. The protagonist, on the other hand, has the Sage class. It's supposed to be a melee class with high magic and control over multiple elements. But in practice, he has little health and only one mana point. Without magic, it's impossible to use any ability of this rare class, which is simply ridiculous. Yudo has to endure this kind of humiliation every day. And since he just stands around without doing much, he's constantly bullied as well. The veteran comments that after the boy's parents died, he had to take care of his younger sister alone. The protagonist confirms, explaining that she's still in high school, and he needs money to pay her tuition. At that moment, the adventurer says that because he's so kind, the squire will receive a special mission. Then, finally revealing the group's true intentions, the stronger adventurers open the gate and shove the weakest one inside. He falls to the ground, completely stunned and unable to believe what just happened. The veteran explains that the conditions for clearing this dungeon were recently discovered. Yudo looks around and finds ancient text carved into a nearby stone. It says that the belly of the land's starving monster must be given an offering, and that offering is, simply put, a human sacrifice. Yudo panics as he realizes what this means, but it's already too late. He's inside as the sacrifice. Even as he shouts for them to wait, no one helps him. They just mock him until the door shuts. In the end, that was their plan from the very beginning. Within seconds, the room's torches light up. The hero then sees who will carry out the sacrifice. It's a monster wielding a massive scythe, looking anything but friendly. Yudo feels danger closing in, and the instant the scythe swings his way, he dodges quickly. He dodges again and again, still not understanding how he ended up in this situation. But the monster doesn't care about that. All it wants is to capture its prey, using all the force it needs. After being struck by a powerful blow, the protagonist is thrown into a pile of bones, badly injured. The monster approaches slowly to finish what it started. If this keeps up, the boy will die. He needs to think fast. As it moves, the monster reveals a container full of souls, which seems to also hold the one meant for the sacrifice. At that moment, the hero realizes his end might be near. But that thought changes when his phone rings. Looking at it, he sees a picture of his sister. He remembers how she sees him as a true hero, and having someone so important believe in him is enough to make him start believing in himself too. With all the strength he has, the protagonist blocks the attack with his shield. After all, with so much at stake, giving up now is not an option. The monster's blow crashes against the boy's defense until, suddenly, a golden light appears, shocking them both. Along with the light, a system message appears, saying that the preparations for awakening are complete. Right after, it asks if he wants to activate the sage's unique skill, called Successor. It was the first time the protagonist had ever seen something like this. Even without fully understanding what it meant, his instincts screamed at him not to let this chance slip away. Upon confirming the choice, the awakening begins. As soon as he accepts the conditions, a golden light bursts out, causing destruction all around, and startling the monster. From there, the protagonist begins to levitate, as a mysterious power flows into his body. 2 years earlier, when he discovered his unique skills through research, he had been excited at the thought of becoming an adventurer. He believed he could escape poverty and saw a bright future ahead. But with an extremely low mana level, he couldn't use any of the sage's skills. Before he knew it, Yudo had become an adventurer stuck forever at the lowest level. Even when he found a guild to work for, it turned out to be corrupt, treating him only as a tool. Still, Yudo never forgot the person he needed to protect. Now, with this new power, the protagonist declares that he won't die in a place like this. The legendary skill Successor awakens, unleashing the martial arts magic of the sage. In addition, the shield tree is unlocked, the power of a sage who mastered the way of the sword through magic. Now, the skills of a melee combat sage flow through his veins. The monster charges, trying to put an end to the boy's sudden comeback. But this time, the protagonist dodges and counterattacks with a precise kick. Now he feels his body as light as a feather. The memories of the martial arts sage flow inside him, and Yudo instinctively knows what to do. This changes everything for the boy, because for the first time, he can truly chase after what he wants. Back in the fight, the battle seems balanced, until the monster grins maliciously and swallows the container full of souls. By consuming it, its strength multiplies, revealing that it had been feeding on adventurers' souls the entire time. But this time, the boy warns that it won't get the taste of his soul. The monster ignores the threat and begins unleashing violent attacks. In Yudo's mind, all he needs now is speed and power. He channels all his magic into his legs. Like lightning, he dashes across the battlefield, dodging everything in his way. In response, the monster prepares a fire spell to hit him in midair. But the boy reacts quickly and counters with a kick, sending the spell back at the creature. At that moment, he realizes he can reflect ranged attacks, and the monster takes its own blow. The hero taunts it, asking if all that confidence earlier was nothing but talk. Enraged, the monster roars and summons a black magic circle, which the protagonist recognizes as enchantment magic. That means it's about to attack at full power, but it also means it will be defenseless for a few seconds. Gathering all his magic into his hands, the protagonist forms an energy sword. At that moment, the monster fires a massive magic beam. Proud of its own power, its expression shifts to fear when the protagonist vanishes and reappears behind it, piercing its chest with a single sword strike wrapped in aura. With the monster defeated, the hero receives the achievement for eliminating the D-rank boss known as the Undead Demon. He also earns the Solo Clear bonus, a magic stone the size of his hand. He celebrates wholeheartedly, marking the first of many victories. Later, sitting on a park bench, the protagonist reflects on how the guild had confiscated all the magic stones and items, which leads him to decide to leave. At least he managed to keep the bonus orb, which is probably a rare item. Suddenly, his watch beeps, announcing a large-scale mission to defeat a necromancer, something that naturally sparks his curiosity. At the location, about 100 participants gather. The dungeon is C-class, and completely different from the G-class ones the boy was used to. A thug remarks in surprise at seeing the hero there and mocks it, asking what the weakest member of the guild thinks he's trying to prove. He even makes sure to say the boy will crawl in misery forever. Yudo agrees, but only when it comes to the Yudo he used to be. Now he's someone else entirely. As a first step, the hero faces the intimidation head-on and tells the thug not to be arrogant, which irritates him deeply. But before the fight can start, a shout draws everyone's attention, and one of the adventurers points toward the sound. Approaching is Serena Hattori, an A-class adventurer and vice leader of the Silverwings Guild. She's one of the leaders of the raid, and since the event is open to everyone, she scolds the thug for the intimidation. Then she advises the protagonist not to be so easily provoked. Changing the subject, she praises his courage and ability to stand his ground, saying, "Not many people are like that." Soon after, all the adventurers gather to hear the instructions. Serena calls for everyone's attention and announces that today's boss is a necromancer. She explains that he has many minions, which is why they need so much manpower. She also says that the Silverwings will take care of the boss while everyone else focuses on the subordinates. However, a sudden light appears behind her, alarming everyone, especially because before they even enter the portal, monsters start pouring out. It was completely different from what everyone expected. Serena shouts for them to stick to the plan and hold their assigned positions. But out of nowhere, an old man appears right in front of her, making her lose her balance and fall down the stairs. Seeing this, Yudo sprints at full speed and catches her at the last moment, saving the damsel in distress. With Serena in his arms, he asks if she's okay. Now it's her turn to be embarrassed. Naturally, the vice leader notices that his magical power is immense, and since the boy was considered weak, the situation feels strange. Straight to the point, Yudo asks if he should handle it. But suddenly, his pocket starts glowing. The undead orb begins reacting for some reason, and when the hero takes a closer look, he notices something that makes him very happy. Without wasting time, the old man lunges forward, trying to slice him in half with his sword. But the protagonist not only dodges, he also lands a powerful kick to the monster's armor, punching a hole in its chest plate and revealing the core. Even so, taking down the boss wouldn't be that simple. The old man grabs Yudo's leg and throws him hard against the wall, causing severe injuries. The hit deals a lot of damage to Yudo, but he can still fight, thanks to the resilience of the martial arts sage. Now, even after being beaten down, he smiles, because he's finally met all the requirements. To unlock a new skill, he needed to find an ancestral hero and resonate with an adventurer's soul. That's how the successor skill was activated, and the system asked if he wanted to continue, making it the perfect moment for a true Yudo showtime. While the main battle rages, the adventurers are fighting the necromancer's minions. Among them, the same thug from before easily takes down an enemy with a single spear strike, knocking a skeleton's head clean off. But since they were undead, that wasn't enough to kill them. The skeleton simply picks up its skull from the ground and places it back on its spine, showing the brute that the fight wouldn't be so easy. At that point, it didn't matter how many they took down, their numbers never seemed to decrease. Yudo holds his ground, keeping the boss occupied while the others attack the skeletons. During a clash, he blocks a strike, but the force of the wind throws him back, causing pain. It seemed impossible to win using sword techniques alone. To fix this, Yudo summons several magic circles under his feet. With that, he unlocks the passive skill of the Sage of Knowledge, known as Instant Foresight. The necromancer charges at him, but this time, the protagonist's eyes can easily predict its movements. Instant Foresight allows the user to anticipate the enemy's next attack. Maybe the hero couldn't win with just the martial arts sage, and the Sage of Knowledge alone wouldn't be enough either, but the fusion of strength and wisdom creates a powerful result. That result is proven the moment he effortlessly destroys the necromancer's core. In Japan, only 3 other people besides him had ever reached sage rank. All 3 are specialists in ranged attacks, and therefore mage-type adventurers. Serena begins to wonder if the hero is really just a regular sage. Now that the boss is down, only the undead soldiers remain. But within seconds, they start collapsing, and all the energy focuses until the necromancer is killed through its core. Then, the old man rises again, and even while praising the adventurer, claims that he still won't be able to defeat him. At that moment, the brute panics when he realizes the necromancer has absorbed the skeleton soldiers to regenerate. Even worse, the other adventurers are starting to lose to the endlessly regenerating skeletons. Faced with this, one of the Silver Wings members tells Serena to retreat for now. Unfortunately, that seems to be the only option, so she won't feel discouraged. The protagonist reassures her, saying he'll handle it, and positions himself in front of the monster again. Back then, it was said that the undead orb could reveal the enemy's weakness depending on the magical power of the one holding it. So Yudo raises the orb and asks everyone to lend him their strength. With that, the remaining skeletons are surrounded by the souls of fallen adventurers, piquing the necromancer's curiosity. This was the strategy to prevent the sorcerer from reviving his servants. With another skill, the protagonist creates several energy swords in the air and warns the monster that it underestimated humans. While the skeletons are trapped by the souls of fallen adventurers, an S-rank skill called Coordinated Designation makes each energy sword strike its target like a guided missile. Thus, all the monsters are destroyed. One of the earlier brutes is left dumbfounded, realizing that the guy he thought was a loser just effortlessly defeated the necromancer boss of a C-rank dungeon. Now the hero's life level is at B, and his magic level is at S. With the success message flashing for everyone to see, the adventurers cheer and applaud. They rush in to hug him, and invite him to join their parties next time. With all this attention, the hero remembers his old fake friends. But as he turns around, he notices the expressions of everyone talking to him now are completely different. This makes Yudo genuinely happy, which annoys the tough guys. Suddenly, something catches the boy's attention. Looking at the necromancer, it almost feels like the creature is calling to him. One of the brutes notices something and shouts, "Kiroshima!" But the necromancer vanishes. Not only him, but the hero disappears as well, teleported to another place. Without knowing where he is, standing in a grassy field, a strange being starts approaching. Emerging from the darkness, it reveals itself as a terrifying monster, enough to unsettle both the boy and the system itself, which issues a warning to stay away. The instant the monster appears before him, the alert puts the hero on full combat readiness, but it doesn't help much. The monster closes the distance in a blink, giving the hero the chilling sense that he's already dead. He only survives thanks to the foresight ability of the Sage of Knowledge, which was already active. He dodges, and right beside him, everything around is obliterated. If not for instant foresight, he wouldn't be alive. Facing such overwhelming presence, Yudo feels fear. He's never seen anything like it. Even while trembling, he finds it exciting. The system then announces that the Sage of Martial Arts is impressed by the successor's courage. Back in the standoff, the two lock eyes, and it looks like the monster is about to attack. But before it can, an even bigger monster appears from behind and swallows the first one whole, right in front of the hero. The situation gets worse as a shadow of an even more colossal monster looms in the sky. Moments later, an explosion engulfs the field, leaving the hero completely bewildered. When the dust settles, the monster has been slain by a giant dragon, showing the brutal law of the jungle. Instead of fear, the hero finds it amusing to realize he's just an ant surrounded by predators. But suddenly, a sharp, crushing headache strikes, and a message echoes in his mind, saying it's still too soon. A few seconds later, he opens his eyes again, now lying in his own bed. Naturally, Yudo thinks it's strange and assumes it was just a dream. But the truth is, his memory is scrambled after the fight with the necromancer. Not only does he not know how he got home, but his hands are shaking and his face is bleeding, proof it was all real. A smile forms on his face at the thought that one day he might reach that level of power. Suddenly, his younger sister knocks on the door and asks if he's awake yet. I immediately wonder if something happened with Arisa, but she just seems annoyed that I'm still sleeping since it's already breakfast time. Heading to the kitchen, I'm surprised to see she's prepared a breakfast loaded with delicious food. I ask what's the occasion for such a fancy breakfast, and she says that since I brought back a good amount of money this time, she went all out cooking. She also just wants me to eat. I start remembering all the hardships we've been through. If I had given up back then, I would have made my sister cry again. Now, I eat the delicious meal she made for me, and of course, I start crying. Arisa panics, not understanding why I'm crying. I tell her it must be the onions in the burger, but she doesn't buy it. She asks if the food is bad, and that makes me stand up and tell her just how amazing it is. We both sit down and eat in peace, enjoying the warm moment, until after the meal, she says she has something to tell me. She grabs a piece of paper from on top of the microwave and shows it to me, saying it's something for my new beginning. In a massive tower surrounded by forests in the city, I can hardly believe I'm back. This is the Adventurer Aptitude Test, also called the Experiment. This test measures an adventurer's strength, and can help secure a spot in a guild. For guilds, it's also a chance to recruit promising newcomers, who can help right away. That's why the place is packed as always, and an elderly man is watching the adventurers closely. An executive asks how this year's candidates are, but the old man says nothing too impressive so far. Even so, among them is a blonde boy who's the reason everyone's here. He has the rare class of Holy Knight. Only 10 people in Japan have it. On top of that, Kanata is ranked at the top of A rank, and also serves as the face of the guild. Kanata is without a doubt everyone's main target. But something else catches the old man's attention. A certain person is also here. That person is Kauji Tsukashiro, from the Abbey Guild. one of the top 100 A-rank adventurers in Japan. The old man finds it strange to see him here, and suspects he might also be after the blonde. But the person standing in the same spot as Kanata is actually the one Kauji is watching. As he stretches, two people approach our hero, and one of them seems to recognize him. To explain to his friend, he recalls that Yudo is the famous veteran known as the weakest sage, not wanting to be underestimated. The hero says he's here to take the test again, which surprises the two at first. Then, they burst into laughter, thinking it won't change anything for him. Unbothered, the hero tells them they should worry more about themselves. But instead of listening, they get irritated and charge at him, thinking he's being disrespectful. The first, wearing a green shirt, tries to attack, but the hero dodges. Then, the one in the red shirt lands a strong kick to the hero's guard, even feeling proud of the hit. But his expression quickly changes to worry, as Yudo grabs his foot, spins him around in one swift motion, and slams him to the ground, taking him out. The guy in the green shirt finally realizes the trouble he's gotten himself into. The pressure coming from the hero makes him feel like he's standing in front of a monster. Even so, Yudo is kind enough to ask if he still wants to continue. The brute decides to run off with his tail between his legs, and Koji confirms the rumors about the necromancer attack. Now, the leader of the Abyss Guild declares he wants to recruit Yudo. Without delay, someone starts clapping to grab everyone's attention, and announces that time is up. That same person warns that, even though it's a test, there's no guarantee of safety. If adventurers want to prove themselves, they need to fight like their lives depend on it. And so, the test begins. From here on, Koji watches closely to see what Yudo is capable of. Suddenly, several monsters appear, and each candidate faces one. Among the rookies, one barely manages to throw a fireball at his enemy's face. Even though it does a bit of damage, it's not enough. As the guy runs from the monster he failed to beat, the brute from earlier tries to attack again but gets struck by the creature's claws, falling to the ground almost defeated. The evaluation is based on points, and you earn points by defeating monsters or completing objectives inside the dungeon. At this rate, the guy in the green shirt won't be able to score enough. Meanwhile, the Holy Knight and the protagonist are doing extremely well. The blonde notices that the one competing alongside him is the famous sage with no magic power. But with Yudo already reaching 1,000 points, Kanata realizes he's going to have to give it everything he's got to keep up. Like true rivals, the two start competing. For a moment, the blonde takes the lead. The brute from before can't believe what he's seeing. Deeper into the dungeon, they reach a room filled with traps. With his high agility, the blonde thinks he can dodge them all and keep moving. Even if he got hit, he figures it'd just be a scratch. Then Kanata tells the hero he's going to show him how fast he is. But to his surprise, the protagonist says that's impossible. The blonde gets irritated, thinking the kid wants to back out. And Yudo stands by what he said without explaining. Kanata feels disappointed, saying he already saw him as a rival. Calling him a coward, the blonde tells him to stay and watch. But before he can move forward, the protagonist stops him and points to the arrows in the wall, explaining they're poisoned, and even a scratch would be fatal. Yudo says that sometimes running away is the best choice. If they take another route, they'll find a safer path ahead. To prove it, he creates a small energy blade, and throws it at a button high on the wall, opening a hidden gate. Although surprised, the blonde also feels frustrated, thinking that avoiding such a simple trap is a waste of time. Even the cameras zoom in on his annoyed face, while Kaisi's allies notice they're already close to the 6th floor. From the analysis, it makes sense for Kanata to be in the upper floors, but not Yudo. So the officials try to figure out how he got there, while Koji just smiles. Back in the dungeon, at this point, only the two of them have made it this far. Seeing the blonde looking tired, Aro asks if he's okay. Kanata admits he's not, since he trained differently. Yudo comments that he built a lot of endurance during his time in the Black Guild. But suddenly, a noise startles them, and they run as fast as they can. Up ahead, they see a little girl running from a giant bear, which shocks them. Kanata realizes he won't make it in time, so he has no choice but to use his sword. When he does, the Holy Knight's death skill activates, temporarily boosting all his stats. Yudo shouts for his partner to wait because something feels off, but the blonde slays the monster in a single strike and hugs the girl, telling her she's safe now. What he didn't expect was for the girl to also be a monster. Seeing this from a distance, the protagonist quickly activates his power and hurls an energy blade at the treacherous creature. Fortunately, he hits his target, finishing the monster with that one attack. And so, the little girl Kanata had just saved is destroyed right in front of him. At that moment, the blonde panics like never before and rushes to try to save her. But when he realizes there's nothing left to save, Kanata grabs the protagonist by the neck, demanding an explanation. Not fully understanding what just happened, he's completely shaken. Before Yudo can even answer, the monster reappears in its true form, and the blonde has to be rescued by the hero, who's sent flying by a hit. Finally, Kanata realizes the magnitude of his mistake, and the protagonist explains it was a mimic-type monster. The creature, still in little girl form, attacks the blonde again, but he can't move due to the recoil from his skill. To fix that, the protagonist rushes in and delivers a powerful kick, wiping the monster out for good. In the end, Kanata wants to know the reason for all this. Yudo tells him he was left unable to fight because he recklessly used his ultimate skill. But what the blonde really wanted to understand was why the hero didn't hesitate for even a second. The protagonist rephrases his answer, saying it was obvious it was a monster. Even so, that wasn't what Kanata meant. The blonde wanted to know why Yudo acted so recklessly, and why he was so desperate to get stronger. Reaching out his hand, the hero says it's important to stay calm and assess the situation. But Kanata reacts childishly, and slaps his hand away. He asks if Yudo thinks he's better than him, and is pretending to be an expert. He also says the hero could never understand how he feels. That's why he declares that from now on they'll each go their own way, which the protagonist finds odd since they're still headed to the same place. Kaneda takes pride in finally reaching the top of the 10th floor, knowing that if he passes this point, he'll be chosen among the best. Suddenly something catches his attention, and he instinctively dodges a deadly strike, managing to reposition himself. A skeletal knight appears, mocking him and saying that a rat sure knows how to run. Being the proud knight he is, the blonde draws his sword and activates his secret skill, determined to make the monster regret it. He needs to finish this before the skill's effect runs out. The monster is slightly impressed, but still blocks every strike with ease. Not even Kaneda's strongest attack can break through the skeleton knight's defense. The enemy says the sword's shine is annoying. At that moment, the 5-second immobilization penalty kicks in. The monster easily breaks the blonde's guard and lands a blow that sends him rolling across the ground. As soon as he stops, the system announces that due to the backlash, all his abilities will be weakened. To avoid major damage during a dungeon collapse, adventurers usually fight until the very end. That's exactly what Kaneda's parents did, and the day he got that news was the same day he decided to become an S-rank adventurer. Back in the fight, the skeleton knight shows a bit of mercy and tells the boy to just walk away. But in that instant, the blonde's eyes blaze with fury, and a red aura engulfs his body. After all, the Camo family is made up of warriors who never run. Shouting this at the monster, the blonde charges forward at high speed. The knight blocks him with ease, saying all that effort is pointless. Then, a bright white light bursts forth, accompanied by a voice congratulating the boy for holding out this long. It's the protagonist, once again saving the blonde's life. Even when his energy sword shatters against the monster's strike, he refuses to give up his position on the front line. Standing before them, Yudo is determined to show what it means for a veteran to guide a rookie. When the hero arrives, Kaneda doesn't feel relieved. He feels insulted, so he tells Yudo to mind his own business. But this is definitely not the time for stubbornness. Kaneda insists this is the fight he chose. The hero asks if he's happy to die here. Yudo doesn't fully understand the blonde's ideals, but he believes he's chasing something. So the question is, was all this effort just for that? Without an answer, Kaneda lets Yudo fight, but still thinks it's impossible for someone who ran from a trap to win. Back in battle, the monster charges, asking what the boy plans to do with that toy. With one blow, he destroys the hero's sword again and sends him flying. Irritated, the monster tells him to grab a real sword, since this is a duel between knights, but Yudo answers that the sword isn't his. Even so, the skeleton knight warns that without a real blade, he'll never pierce his armor. The hero, however, says he can still run, surprising everyone. That's exactly what Kaneda was expecting. First, Yudo interrupted a duel between knights, then showed up wielding a weak sword. To make things worse, Nami wants to walk away from the fight, since everyone knows the knight's code of honor. Furious, the monster charges for a final strike, but the hero dodges with a high leap, confusing the horse and making the skeleton knight fall. Yudo had already predicted the monster's move, because a lancer's attack always comes as a direct charge. That's why the blonde realizes the hero used the enemy's own nature against him. While summoning a massive energy arrow in the sky, Yudo tells Kaneda to remember what he's about to say. He says retreating doesn't mean giving up, then fires the spell at the skeleton knight. The attack hits dead on, flying right over the blonde and destroying everything in its path. Yudo knew that this type of monster grows stronger thanks to its mount. Without the horse, it's just a regular soldier. That's how the protagonist managed to score double the points of the second-place record holder in history. Yudo can hardly believe he won with a ranking higher than the nation's best. Now Kaneda looks at the hero differently, trying to figure out what he does that gets him the same results. With nothing left to do in that tower, the two head back to the testing hall. Soon, officials from various guilds rush in to recruit them. Naturally, the protagonist gets more offers, since he was the only one to defeat the final boss. Even while ignored by the crowd, Kaneda gets an unexpected visit. The blonde woman recognizes Kauji instantly, and he says it's an honor to be remembered by someone as talented as Kaneda. Of course, it's easy to remember someone with S-rank skills. She mentions that the protagonist is on the other side. But Kauji didn't come to talk to the wrong person. The one he wants is Kaneda. Naturally, she questions whether he's really being invited to the Abyss Guild after acting so disgracefully. The guild leader simply says they'll talk more in the car. As for Yudo, since he proved even more impressive than expected, Kauji had an idea better than just an invitation. This is the first time the protagonist has received so much attention, but the excitement doesn't last long. Suddenly, everyone's phones start ringing. On the testing hall's main screen, it shows that there's been a dungeon invasion at Minnan Secondary School. So far, 2 Class A adventurers have been killed, and the estimated threat level is a disaster for 100,000 people. The worst part is the location. When Yudo checks his phone, he sees messages from Arisa saying something is happening at her school. Guild officials call for the hero to evacuate with them immediately, but when they look around, he's already gone. Now all that matters is that the protagonist runs as fast as possible to save Arisa. At the scene of the tragedy, several people are pushed back by the police while a reporter records everything. Civilians shout to be let in because their family members are inside, but the officers hold them back even though they don't want to be in that position either. One person, however, doesn't hesitate to jump over the barricade. It's the protagonist, seeing up close for the first time the destruction caused by a dungeon. He tries calling his sister, but there's no answer. The signal is probably blocked by the high magical density. Then, a monster appears to face him, making it clear that there are now other priorities. The hero summons his sword and slashes diagonally, but the damage is so small the monster practically laughs at him. Even the weakest monsters here are as strong as the most powerful ones from the experiment. This time, the protagonist wraps his hand in energy, changes tactics and goes for close combat, landing a punch so strong it finally takes the creature down. With one less enemy, he still needs to hurry, but as he moves through the wreckage, he sees someone injured. someone important. Inside the car of the Abyss Guild leader, Kaneda watches the news about the number of victims in the level A dungeon invasion. He gets worried because it's exactly like when his parents died. Kai, on the other hand, tries to comfort him, reminding him how brave they were 3 years ago in Shibuya. Out of nowhere, the guildmaster found out I was from a noble guild with a sense of justice. But the blonde boy knew that if the S-class adventurers had arrived earlier, his parents would still be alive. Even now, there's no sign of the S-class adventurers. So Kaneda asks what they're doing. Kauji explains that unfortunately, they won't be showing up, pouring cold water on the boy's hopes. He also says that even if they did come, they'd only arrive after everything was over. Of course, the boy wants to know what the guild leader is trying to say with that. The explanation is that there's only one way to stop a dungeon invasion: destroying the portal's core. The core is the singularity that connects Earth to another world, and it takes a very powerful attack to break it. Kaneda asks if destroying the core would end the breach. Koji confirms it would, but explains there are 2 problems. The first is the absurd number of monsters, preventing anyone from getting close enough to investigate. The second is the number of guardians protecting the core, since from the very first breach decades ago, every single one of them has been at least S rank. Kaneda is stunned because he's never heard of monsters that strong. They say that even if someone finds the core, an S rank monster is the end of the line for A rank adventurers. In the end, it's clear that anyone going in to fight now would basically be going to sacrifice themselves. Meanwhile, the Silverwings Guild is in charge, led by Shingo Azora and vice leader Serena Hattori. Kuji looks at his phone and finds fate ironic. At the dungeon's exit, the protagonist realizes the injured man is wearing the Silverwings uniform. But the man seems more concerned with knowing why the hero is there. Holding him in his arms, Yudo says his sister goes to school there. Suddenly, the man's condition worsens, and before dying, he shouts the name Serena loud enough for the hero to hear. Deeper inside the dungeon, one of the companions is lifted by the legs and killed right in front of everyone. The scene is so brutal that Serena drops to her knees in shock and screams as loud as she can, unable to save him. As he moves through the school, the protagonist worries about Serena, but first he has to find Arisa. When he opens the first door, Yudo nearly falls into a lava pit. He clings with all his strength to the other side, in a moment of pure terror. The real world seems to be starting to get consumed by the dungeon's erosion. Knowing Arisa is a second-year student, Yudo thinks about heading to the upper-year classrooms. But the area's instability increases, and with no clear route, the next zone could be random. He's been using magic non-stop since the experiment, and is already starting to feel weak. At that moment, he realizes he has something on him that can help restore his magic. Suddenly, a group of monsters appears, shattering the brief calm. Even weakened, the hero reacts, shouting for them to get out of the way as he unleashes his powers. In a more secluded corner of the library, Arisa, hiding with her senior Ryoa, apologizes for insisting they stay there. She gets a flick to the forehead in response, as the senior doesn't want her friend blaming herself, especially since it was her own idea to go to the library. Even so, Arisa tries calling her brother. Ryoa asks if it's Yudo, and Arisa answers excitedly, yes. For Ryoa though, a sage without magic won't be much help. Speaking frankly, she says that no matter how strong he is now, they'll have to survive on their own. Arisa understands, but she's still confident her brother will save them. After all, he's an A-grade in knowledge. Still, the senior isn't sure they'll make it with the skills they have. Suddenly, an explosion startles them both, putting Ryoa on alert, and leaving Arisa terrified. Soon, thick slime starts dripping behind them. It's a huge monster, spotting them on top of a bookshelf and driving them into panic. The monster slices the shelf in half, but they manage to dodge. Ryo then steps in front to protect Arisa, and tells her to run while she faces the creature. It's a life-or-death situation, with only one chance to summon. She activates the command, and angelic wings appear, but the summoning is just a white dove. The monster raises its weapon to strike, and Ryoa knows she wasn't lucky. At that moment, 2 people arrive just in time. A punch to the monster's jaw sends it flying. When the dust settles, Arisa's eyes shine with hope. The protagonist thanks the veteran for protecting his sister, and extends his hand, saying it's now his turn to protect her. Even though it's just politeness, Kuka takes it as the charm of a prince. While the two share a brief glance, the monster recovers from the blow, which excites the protagonist, since everyone there is as strong as bosses. With them facing off, Ryoka watches the fight for a moment. The last time she saw the hero, he seemed unsure and afraid. That's why she wishes she had seen that smile before graduation. First, the protagonist grabs a table and positions it as a barricade to protect the girls. Suddenly, he starts pushing the table with force, running straight toward the monster. The Minotaur reacts by smashing the table with a single strike, splitting it in half. But once it's over, it realizes no one was behind it. Taking advantage of the opening, the protagonist jumps in for an aerial attack. However, the monster blocks and throws him far away, making him crash into several shelves, which leaves his younger sister desperate. This monster seems to have even stronger muscles than ogres and greater strength than the skeletal knight. The hero begins to doubt whether he can defeat it. Kurup yells that monsters like that usually have their legs as a weak spot. The system confirms she's right. The protagonist thanks her for the tip. With a new strategy in mind, he charges forward, confident he can take down the giant. He lands a kick to the Minotaur's calf, dealing the expected damage. The monster stumbles, reigniting the girl's hope, but since they're so close, the creature opens its mouth to devour the hero alive. That's exactly what the boy wanted. The surprise is revealed. The protagonist activates his energy burst, piercing through the beast's body, since it can't reinforce its insides the way it does its exterior. Arisa thanks him for saving her, but he gives the credit to the necklace he's wearing. It was the graduation gift she had given him. Since Arisa's feelings were in it, they probably turned into stored magic power. The girl says she's relieved she could get the two of them in sync. The The magic stone in her hair serves to let her brother know where she is. That's why she always wears it, and the protagonist thanks her for the help. He says he only found the way to that floor because of a pigeon that flew out of the library. But since it was a coincidence, the girl admits she hadn't planned anything. The hero then asks if she's Ryo, making her curious about how he knows her name. Udo explains that she ranked first in the annual exam, making her unforgettable to him. He also remembers that she saved him, which only increased his admiration. However, for some reason, Ryoka doesn't seem pleased. Some time ago, she had heard rumors in the hallways about his awakening. But more than anything, she was called the court fool and the powerless sage of the school. Right before she was saved, she had been fighting against the hero. That's why Ryoka is tired of people like that. This statement catches the protagonist's attention, but Arisa makes up an excuse to change the subject. Until someone shows up, mocking how the group seems to be having fun in that situation. With a weapon strapped to his back, the man approaches and asks if he's been left out. Since he doesn't recognize him, the protagonist shouts for him not to come closer. The man's magical energy carries a clear killing intent. He asks if they don't know who he is. Ryo explains that this is Kujo Rakuji, second place among S-class adventurers and guildmaster known as the White Knight. The man praises the girl for knowing so much, saying it's expected of a student. Even so, the three don't seem welcoming. Noticing this, the blonde says there's no reason to be so cautious. Since he's on a national level mission, he disappears to get back to work. But that mission turns out to be completely different when Kujo reappears with his spear pointed at the hero, saying he's going to finish him off. Outside the school, a girl comments that once again, the young master is making his move. A man beside her asks if she thinks he'll lose to a rank A guild. But that's not what she meant, since right now their main goal is to make sure the prey doesn't escape. Back in the library, the protagonist is hit directly, and while his sister worries, Yudo shouts for her not to come closer. Still shouting, the hero demands to know why an S-class would want to attack him. The blonde simply says they're making too much noise and charges forward using an illusion-based cloning technique. Fortunately, the protagonist manages to dodge the first strike, surprising the adventurer since his attack should have appeared distorted. Even without fighting seriously, the protagonist can still dodge with ease, something a rank A shouldn't be able to do. So the blonde changes tactics and goes after Yudo's younger sister first. In an instant, the blade gets close. But at the last second, the hero throws himself in front of her and shoves the man back hard, telling him to stop messing around, making him slide away. Kujo grows curious whether the protagonist is actually an A-level adventurer. Yudo Kiroshima introduces himself as an F-level adventurer, which makes the man laugh almost uncontrollably, but leaves the blonde furious for having been underestimated like that. The hero tries to show his registration card to prove he's not lying. But without caring, Kujo charges at him, using his skill called Spear of Death. Even though the protagonist dodges, the blow still grazes him, making Yudo realize the hard way that the illusion was real. Kujo remarks that it's funny, since his skill turns the real into fake and the fake into real. Even so, the protagonist believes that if he breaks them all, there won't be a problem. But the blonde insists it won't make sense, and somehow neutralizes the hero's ability with an identical illusion, knocking Yudo to his knees after landing a hit. With this easy victory, Kujo says the kid is way too weak, and Yudo gets a close look at how terrifying an S-rank's power really is. Even so, the man walks toward the girls, saying it would be fun to kill a self-proclaimed F-rank. Kujo, however, finds it more interesting to see Yudo's gentle face twisted in despair. The protagonist tries with all his might to stop him, but can't, and the blonde declares he's going to kill them all anyway. At that moment, the hero realizes he's been mistaken. He thought that power was his, but in reality, he's only been able to fight this long because of the successor. So Yudo wonders if being a magicless sage is something that truly belongs to him. As an F-rank adventurer, he would never be able to defeat an S-rank. Giving up feels like the natural option, but the wisdom of the system asks if he's really going to let it all end here, making Yudo think twice. The system then asks if he's willing to lose his sister, which finally snaps him back to his senses. The protagonist shouts that he won't let anything happen to her, making the sage proud. He says that to move forward, he needs to defeat that guy, because at some point, Yudo must reach that green field again to protect what's precious. The sage advises the protagonist to want it with all his heart, and strike with even more determination. And so, the peak of the martial arts sage is finally reached. At the end of his speech, the martial arts sage responds to the firm resolve of his successor by offering the inheritance of the celestial sword. A rift in space-time opens before the protagonist. Along with it, a warning from the sage appears in the system. If the boy's will falters, his soul will be consumed by the sword's killing intent. But by now, Yudo doesn't care about the consequences. He's already made his choice. And that choice is to never let an opportunity slip away again, no matter the cost. When he pulls the sword from the rift, a tornado of energy bursts from the ground. All eyes from Kujo to the girls turn toward the event. On the blonde's face, there's clear concern, and in the girl's eyes, perhaps a glimmer of hope. Radiating power, Yudo raises the celestial sword, gathering an immense amount of energy. The sword bears inscriptions that make it a living weapon. Without hesitation, the protagonist declares Kujo as his future opponent. In the sky, there's both dawn and dusk. They say no one can hold on to those moments. Of course, everyone dreams of the sky, and even more so, they long to reach the paradise of the Menth. That's where the celestial sword lies. And now, it will be part of our hero's fight to protect Orisa and Ryoa. Orisa is clearly shaken by her brother's state. The same goes for the blonde, who wonders if he's even the same person as before. Kujo jokes that powerful weapons always ruin the fun of a fight. But before he can continue, the protagonist vanishes, and in a flash of light reappears near Kujo, delivering a powerful strike. The attack slams the S-rank into the wall hard, just like what happened to the hero at the start. Even injured, Kujo laughs, thinking this is all insane. But Yudo doesn't answer. It's clear from his expression that he's not playing around. Moments ago, the hero was getting beaten badly, but now the tables have completely turned. That's why Kuka asks if the protagonist always acts like this. Even his sister, who knows him well, admits she doesn't know. This is the first time she's seen him fight. Still, she agrees he really doesn't seem like the same person. Back in the fight, the hero asks if the guy could just leave quietly without making a scene. The blonde pretends to think for a second, then shouts he'd never do that, charging again with his spear. This time he believes old tricks won't work, certain he'll win relying on his spear technique. He attacks repeatedly, but the protagonist defends and counters with precision. Stokumo tries another strike, but Uda blocks it with ease, almost effortlessly. The blonde doesn't know what kind of sword that is, but thinks spears should have the advantage over swords. Only that's not how it goes, because the protagonist slips past his guard and almost lands a killing blow. If Kujo hadn't ducked at the last moment, quickly the adventurer repositions, taking a ready stance with his spear to attack again, but the protagonist kicks the weapon, pinning it to the floor. Then he jumps, uses the spear's shaft to push off, and strikes down from above, a blow Kujo barely manages to block. Kujo shouts, asking if the kid isn't afraid. The protagonist's eyes show no hesitation. If anything, they seem lost, consumed by the sword's aura. Little by little, he grows more reckless, making the spear's advantage seem small. Once again, the blonde barely escapes being finished off, but this time, he takes a cut to his right shoulder. He tries every possible angle to regain control of the fight. When he can't, Kujo smashes through a wall and runs into the school hallway. As the protagonist chases, the blonde feels proud of his repositioning strategy. Face to face with the hero, Kujo admits the kid is really tough. He says if he had known what trick the kid was hiding, he never would have messed with him. But now he drops his weapon too. To the protagonist's surprise, Yudo isn't the only one with a hidden trump card. As he summons a spear, Kujo explains that an illusion is created by the refraction of light. And conveniently, this weapon can turn that effect into something real. This is the A-rank weapon known as the Mirage Spear. Immediately, the blonde asks if the hero remembers the first strike he used on her during their fight. That's because this weapon perfectly matches her natural ability. On top of that, Kujo admits he lured the protagonist into the hallway specifically to make dodging multiple attacks harder. But in response, the protagonist says he'll just break through them all at once, leaving the blonde a little disappointed with the boy's lack of strategy. Still, she doesn't reject the hero's plan and charges forward, daring him to try. Udo, sword in hand, feels confident that by continuing to seek this connection, he can achieve greater feats than anyone else. Without breaking eye contact, he fires an energy blast from his sword and dashes at high speed toward the clones. Before the impact, the blonde guy realizes the situation is getting out of control. After the special attack, the ground is completely cleared. Like an experienced adventurer, Kujo decides to flee the fight. With no more threats nearby, the girls rush to check on the hero, but before tending to himself, he asks if they're okay. He's genuinely happy to see that the chaos seems to be over. A few seconds later, the blonde's companions ask if he's really going to abandon the mission, just because he thinks they're facing an S-class dungeon. Kujo replies that there's nothing more to be done, especially because, as he turns around, it's clear his injuries almost killed him. His subordinates are curious about what caused such wounds to the young master. Either way, Kujo comments that only fools risk so much for so little. With his mind made up, the blonde calls his father and reports that the mission has failed. His father, who seems to have a strong personality, harshly criticizes him. Kujo bluntly says that if they're going to hire an assassin, it should be someone S-class. Even so, he makes it clear it won't be easy, because soon everyone will know. Soon the world will witness the rise of the powerful monster known as Yudo Kiroshima. Back at the fight's location, the girls rush to check on the protagonist. Luckily, he hasn't suffered any serious injuries, but that strange man managed to escape. Arisa comments that Yudo seems like a different person, and the hero replies it's thanks to the sword. When he tries to show the weapon to the girls, it starts to fade until it disappears completely. It seems that if he loses focus, the sword loses its form. Yudo explains he can't use it whenever he wants. Suddenly, the protagonist's phone rings, which is strange since there's no signal here. Unbelievably, it's an email from the blonde apologizing for the unexpected attack. This leaves the protagonist speechless and unsure how to respond. Then, a loud noise is heard, and the girls duck for cover. In another email, Kujo explains that he used an item to speed up his escape from the dungeon. This infuriates the protagonist, but he has no time to be angry. Suddenly, a monster appears right beneath them. The hero yells for everyone to get out quickly. As for how they'll escape, he tells them not to say anything to the teacher, since he jumped out the window with the girls in his arms, falling several stories. For some reason, the girls are more worried about the damage to the building, which is why he asked them not to snitch. Meanwhile, the monster, a giant carnivorous plant, chases them, ending up face to face with the group. Faced with this, the protagonist asks Kuja to take care of the younger sister. At such a critical moment, the hero tries to focus on summoning the celestial sword again. But this time, it's not as easy as before, even though he thinks he's concentrating. He only realizes he's panicking when he looks back and sees his sister's frightened face. Meanwhile, the monster ignores the group for now, since it has already captured Serena, who is about to become plant food. Seeing this, the protagonist charges with all his strength, destroying part of the monster and rescuing her safely. Thankfully, the girl is still conscious, though coughing heavily, and the hero tells her to rest for a bit. Before passing out, she hands the hero an item called the Stabilization Ring, capable of controlling the dungeon's collapse. This item will serve to absorb the Guardian if the core is attacked. If all goes well, it could also put an end to this nightmare. At that moment, the hero understands his mission, gripping the ring tightly to show he won't let her efforts go to waste. A bit farther away, a car speeds by with Kujo being treated inside. At this point, there's only 1 minute left before the dungeon's total collapse. When that happens, the entire east of Japan will be overrun by monsters. Now, the fate of that place lies in the hands of our hero, who must first defeat the monster in front of him. This time, the hero's aura sword seems stronger thanks to the celestial sword's influence. Before, it could barely scratch an ogre, but now it cuts through those tentacles with ease. The hero wonders if he can really win, but when he looks back, he sees that the girls believe in him. So Yudo decides to believe as well. Soon, all the damage caused by the monsters begins to regenerate. Even wanting to fight, the hero knows he can't take it head-on. He starts by dodging an attack, using the monster's body as a path to reach the core, but a bat-like creature appears to block him. 20 seconds remain. With 18 seconds left, the protagonist is far from the area that once seemed so close, but he doesn't give up. To avoid falling, he grabs a vine and uses it to launch himself forward with full force. With 12 seconds remaining, he gets very close to the giant carnivorous plant. At 10 seconds, Yudo positions himself directly over the core, almost at the edge of the access point. Naturally, the countdown begins as the hero's attack nears. With 5 seconds left, the defenses around the core are destroyed. With 4 seconds, a small crack appears, and at 3 seconds, Yudo presses even harder. With only 2 seconds remaining, a crater finally opens in the core, and the protagonist quickly grabs the item Serena gave him. At the last moment, he presses it against the monster's energy source, releasing a blinding golden light across the area. In the United States, at the Pentagon's underground facility, several military personnel are gathered in front of high-tech computers. One officer announces that Japan is experiencing a dungeon rupture, and alerts the director. Surprisingly, the director seems satisfied, saying the destruction unfolded according to plan. It's revealed that Kujo is coordinating 5 major American guilds to act in Japan and the Western Pacific. Suddenly, someone arrives requesting the E5. This person is James Blood, the top-level American adventurer and leader of the guild's strategy. He declares that his guild alone will handle the situation, and the director trusts him. After all, controlling Japan would give them access to all the dungeons in the Pacific. But something strange happens, a sudden drop in energy. To their surprise, the dungeon rupture drops to 0%. The director shouts, "This doesn't make sense." Even James is curious to know who did it, knowing it wouldn't be easy for him. The only thought that crosses his mind is that the coalition of the 1,000 strongest guilds has taken action. A week later, at the university hospital, the person in charge is there holding flowers. By this time, the dungeon rupture has stabilized, becoming a controlled dungeon. But the Silver Wings lost about 90% of its members, leaving only Serena and a few staff. After gaining control of the dungeon, they began profiting from adventurers using it. Even so, the hero believes none of that will save any families. At that moment, someone knocks on the door of the room where Serena is recovering. She tells the person to come in. The person is our hero, and his presence visibly makes Serena happy. Getting straight to the point, the protagonist asks how Serena's recovery is going. She replies that rehabilitation will start the next day, meaning she'll soon be able to return, as dungeon exploration is essential for maintaining the guild. With a smile, the hero tells her to call him whenever she needs help. Serena seems like she wants to say something, but before she can, 2 students appear. The protagonist, visibly surprised, asks how they managed to get in. Arisa explains that since she passes through there often, she got an access card, something the hero doesn't have. Kuka is relieved to finally find the protagonist. She shows the hero something important on her phone. After the great achievement, a news story about the adventurer began circulating. Udo gave an interview saying his motivation is to protect his beloved. Kuka comments that this has become a problem, as he's being misunderstood. But for him, there's no issue openly expressing his love for his sister. He asks if it's wrong to show how he feels, which makes the student even more nervous. Suddenly, a notification chimes on the girl's phone. She considers deleting the account, thinking the timing is bad. But Arisa mentions she saw the video her friend posted while trying to get a job. At first, it didn't gain much attention, but later it grew significantly. Additionally, a published article made the girl go viral online. The hero is surprised, as it's impossible to predict how the public will react. Then, a strange bright light appears on the girl's forehead. Without hesitation, Yudo approaches and asks for permission, making her feel embarrassed. At this moment, the sage, through the system, grants a new ability called Divine Revelation, which allows him to foresee the future. It's said Kuka can evolve to an advanced class if she gains around 300,000 fans. The hero has already heard stories of people changing professions, and the most important thing is that if someone with a limited class can evolve while keeping their knowledge, they can become amazing. Kuka still doesn't fully understand the mission, but remembering the past mockery and the protagonist's rise, she agrees to do whatever it takes to get her chance to start over. Placing her hands on the hero's shoulders, she says that if she goes viral now, things will get intense, and since they've already come this far, she asks if he will take responsibility, and Yudo agrees immediately. Thus, their path is decided. For the next video, the protagonist suggests doing a live stream inside a dungeon, a very bold idea coming from her. Later, on the way home, before entering, Kuka hears a curious sound. It comes from a happy family playing in the neighboring yard. The older sister of a child named Hina notices her shoelaces are untied, and bends down to teach her how to tie them. But instead of feeling joy, this family scene triggers something in Kuka. The girl's sister was a prodigy who awakened 2 professions but ended up becoming a shadow. Still, she had her moment when she scored top marks on an important school exam. Her mother congratulated her, but without much enthusiasm, since Kuka didn't have Hibiki's abilities. That small recognition was enough for the girl to want to keep striving. But after that, her sister became an adventurer instead of finishing high school, quickly rose to S rank, and abandoned the family. Kuka had to bear her parents' expectations alone, a heavy burden. With a useless power, daily humiliation became routine, and her mother associated her misfortune with hatred toward her daughters, something Kuka tried to explain. To her mother, the blame for Hibiki leaving was hers. The girls' class is called Playboy, and as the name suggests, it's only for silly games. Trying to improve, Kuka thought to focus on studying again, but reality was harsh. On an ordinary day, she received a note from her parents rejecting her. Even after reading something so harsh, she didn't get angry. She cried, dreaming of becoming a great adventurer and bringing her family back. It was a painful moment that reminded her of the past, but also renewed her determination. In a mid-level dungeon called Clear Sky Tower, Yudo meets Kuka. She's curious to see if her subscriber count will rise, and the hero assures her the strategy will work. The video site Tech grew fast thanks to adventure content, and dungeon exploration live streams are currently the most popular category. First, the girl adjusts the camera, but the hero notices she's in portrait mode. Although not a big mistake, he moves closer to fix it and switch to landscape mode. Yudo explains it's better to watch horizontally on a phone to get a wider view of the dungeon. Kuka comments that he seems very experienced, and the hero confirms, though he doesn't mention staying up all night studying for her. Either way, the two enter the dungeon. As soon as they start, the livestream is already up with a few viewers watching. So the girl greets the audience, but the comments quickly shift to complimenting Yudo's appearance. Suddenly, someone donates, and both thank them, saying part of the money will help cover the dungeon disaster expenses. The audience seems to be growing, so they need to start quickly. Today, they're hunting rabbits on the first floor of Clear Sky Tower, with the goal of defeating 20 in a minute. Kuka feels a lot of pressure, fearing the audience will give up on her if she fails. But Yudo asks if she's ready, and gives the signal, making the crowd cheer. Kuka quickly summons a deck of cards in her hand, and since it's not a pigeon, the audience is confused. Surprisingly, the cards are sharp enough to pierce the monsters. This is Playboy's only offensive ability, which worries her a little. Even so, she knows she can't doubt herself now. She needs to give her best. Cupid launches another card attack, but unexpectedly, her deck is cut in half by a monster. To her surprise, it's a Vorpal rabbit, a stronger species. The rabbit charges at her quickly. While running and protecting her head, the viewers comment that someone needs to help and say she looks really cute. At that moment, Yudo apologizes for letting it happen and defeats the monster in a single blow with incredible speed. Soon after, Kuka starts crying because the mission should have been easy. The protagonist apologizes again. The girl then says she'll only forgive him if he buys her a cappuccino when they return. Breaking the mood, Yudo senses something approaching and pulls the girl aside to escape. No one should be armed there, but a knife is stuck in the ground near them. Yudo demands that whoever is hiding show themselves. The hooded figure responds, saying everything is exactly as the rumors said. They mention the Zero Sage, leaving the viewers confused, wondering if it's all a setup. But soon the enemy appears behind Kuka, pointing a knife at her, causing panic in the chat. Before the girl realizes it, the hooded figure lightly touches her neck with the blade. Luckily, before anything worse happens, the protagonist reacts, using his powers to launch a projectile at the enemy. The attack hits the head, and both think they've won. But the hooded figure isn't defeated so easily. Even with a hole in his head, he stays standing, surprising the hero. At that moment, others emerge from a nearby bush, accompanied by a giant spider monster. Kuka explains that they are puppeteers, a dangerous profession that controls magical puppets to attack. Suddenly, a system mission appears, asking the hero to defeat the assassin in exchange for 100 coins. What catches Kuka's attention is that this message didn't come from the sages. To make matters worse, someone far away starts posting calculated comments on the live stream. All are negative, saying the only option is to run. A wave of pessimistic comments appears, betting on the two dying, but the protagonist ignores them, thinking that if they find the real body, they'll be fine. Smiling, he thinks it's a good idea to fight while the girl gives the instructions. The assassin can't believe the protagonist wants to face him alone, but the hero says he's not alone, which only makes the enemy mock Ryoa, leaving her hurt. Yudo understands that Playboy's profession may seem like a game to some, but he makes it clear that the assassins won't make a difference either, which irritates the enemy. Shouting insults, the enemy advances with his puppets. Needing to protect someone, the boy sharpens his senses and summons the celestial sword once again. With the weapon in hand, the protagonist moves forward, greatly impressing Ryoa. The hero's strategy is to draw the enemy's attention to himself. This prevents them from focusing on the girl, even without being certain of victory. Then, the girl begins to feel that this is someone who trusts her, very different from her past family experiences. Ryoga knows better than anyone how scary it is to be pressured to succeed. Even scared, the girl thinks carefully about what she's feeling and smiles, realizing she's truly happy. Without staying still, she summons a large number of pigeons flying toward the warriors. The enemy mocks her, saying it's useless no matter how many animals appear. But Kuka ignores him and asks the protagonist to keep the enemy distracted. Concentration and energy start to build, and she hopes the camera is capturing everything correctly because now she believes she can do something amazing if she tries. The Playboy class is known for being difficult to succeed in alone, but her strength lies in support abilities, like distraction. Now the girl can even share her vision with the pigeons. The results of daily training show up. In seconds, one of the pigeons spots the enemy. As soon as the 8 signal is given, the protagonist cuts through a tree and rushes after the opponent. The sense of being chased throws the assassin into a panic, but he can't do anything, because as soon as Yudo reaches the object controlling the puppeteer, he destroys everything with the celestial sword, forcing the enemy to his knees. With the hero's victory secured, Kuka scolds the hooded figure for what he said about her ability. Suddenly, a pigeon lands on the enemy's head to deliver his punishment, making the group reconsider how useful that class could be. Even so, Yudo makes a secret request to his friend. She finds it a little embarrassing, but the hero insists. Yudo then strikes a pose, declaring that justice transcends dimensions. Kuka mirrors the gesture, adding that emotions also cross dimensions. The two finish in a synchronized pose, ending the stream as the viewers laugh non-stop. Later that night, the protagonist praises Kuka's great work, and they exchange thanks with a handshake. The hero says it's time to head back. Before leaving, the girl insists on thanking him once more. Yudo says the victory was only possible thanks to her instructions. But that's not exactly what she meant. She lets the topic go and changes the subject to explain herself better. Kuka asks if she heard Yudo call her by her first name correctly. The protagonist quickly apologizes, saying he didn't notice, but she wasn't complaining, to the hero's surprise. She smiles and says that from now on, Yudo can call her Suzuka. In the dark room where the negative comments came from, a woman remarks that they did a good job handling the situation. Even finding it all amusing, the girl believes she'll meet Suzuka in person soon. Sometime after the events, Suzuka surpasses 2 million followers, and Yudo congratulates her via message. He encourages her to keep trying to get a job, and Suzuka replies with a tired sticker. At home, the hero says he also needs to work harder. Later, another message arrives. Lately, all the guilds want to use him as a star for promotion, but since they don't see him as a real adventurer, Yudo kicks a trash can in anger. Thinking of Arisa, the money is tempting, but as she wisely said, giving in to temptation isn't a good idea. Yudo wants to explore dungeons that no one has conquered yet. He wonders if that desire is too luxurious, but believes it's fine. After all, he's an adventurer. Suddenly, he gets a message from Serena on his phone, asking him to meet her at the old high school, which piques his curiosity. Even so, he goes there, which is now the dungeon administration office. A few months have passed, but the place is already running smoothly. An older woman appears and asks if she's speaking to Kiroshima, saying she's been expecting him. She offers to take the protagonist to where Serena is. As they walk, he asks if it's safe for normal people to be around, and the woman assures him it is. She also believes that in any emergency, she'll be protected by the hero. Wasting no time, the woman introduces herself as the mother of Yumino, who was a member of the Silver Wings. Even without knowing her name, Yudo understands what happened to the guild. The mother says her son saw Yudo in a dungeon called Twilight Castle and hasn't stopped talking about him since. Feeling deep guilt, the protagonist suddenly shouts, apologizing for not arriving sooner. For a moment, the woman reflects on his words but quickly tells the boy not to blame himself. She reminds him that alone, he couldn't have saved the 89 fallen members. This leaves the hero speechless. Still, the woman says it's not all his fault, so he doesn't have to carry that burden alone. While the boy thinks about this, the mother comments that her son would have been happy just knowing Yudo was the one who stopped the dungeon, because for him, the protagonist was his greatest hero. At the end of the conversation, Serena appears, and the two say goodbye to the woman, now completely alone. To lighten the mood, the girl remarks that the place is amazing, since her magic can even change the weather and climate. But right behind her is a memorial, reminding her of all the companions she lost. She says they were given authority to manage dungeons, but she admits she's not sure she can call it a victory. Faced with this doubt, Yudo suggests they consider the outcome a victory, even if it's only for the sake of the companions who passed. At that moment, he says that if he can protect at least a few things with his own hands, he wants to move forward without losing them. Serena understands his point of view and smiles, agreeing to think that way. After all, in the end, all they can do is take a deep breath. Changing the subject, the girl asks if she can say something strange. When he agrees, she summons a wand, because at that moment, she's inviting the protagonist to a serious duel between them. Although Yudo is surprised at first, he says he won't hold back. Then the two face each other before the fight begins. For a long time, Serena wondered if the hero was really a sage, and hearing it from her leaves him speechless. She just laughs and launches 4 electric magic orbs at Yudo. Noticing the orbs approaching fast, the protagonist dodges, and Serena comments that this instant prediction is really hard to deal with. Yudo plans first to distract the girl from the left, to attack from the right, but his prediction indicates that won't work, so he changes the plan and attacks from the left. Even so, he doesn't see himself as the winner, which makes him retreat to think of a better strategy. Yudo starts getting nervous, unable to understand how Serena is outpacing his predictions. Then she asks if he can't even handle a delicate lady, and he runs to her, begging her to stop playing. If the girl is reading his movements, Kiroshima thinks he can use brute force to disarm her, but Serena keeps smiling without moving. That's because she easily blocks the strike with her wand. Proud of her strength, she says that the hero's master is yelling behind him, and Yudo asks how she knows that. Her answer comes as a kick that breaks through the hero's defenses, sending him flying backward with force. As she said, the martial arts arena is furious. Serena finds the hero's strategy of jumping back to reduce impact interesting, and even laughs at it, keeping Yudo on high alert. In the end, the hero admits how tough the battle is, realizing she might be the strongest opponent he's faced since awakening. Amused, the girl remembers that she hasn't revealed her class yet. Considering the wand and magic attacks, Yudo guesses she's a conductor, and he's right. It's a rare class that reads the battlefield and guides allies with commands. Although it's a strong class, it's not as rare as Sage. Not knowing what to do, the hero asks what he should do. The girl explains that a conductor directs and unites the team. Now, Serena asks if the protagonist will let her play her melody. Suddenly, an ability called Symphony begins to play, enveloping the entire battlefield. The protagonist quickly dodges all attacks, but Serena warns that running won't help, and then a strong musical note explodes, creating a shockwave. Taking the opportunity, the girl attacks again, her strikes nearly hitting Yudo multiple times, until he's cornered against a wall. At that moment, she focuses all attacks on one point, defeating the hero with this tactic. Serena explains that in a duel, it's essential to understand the rhythm, breathing, and movements of the opponent, because in both fighting and music, there's a flow. That's why you shouldn't let the enemy act freely, but instead perceive and control their movements. From this, Yudo realizes his instant prediction wasn't working because his breathing patterns were being read. But when it comes to overcoming the situation, the girl says the hero should already know, because she senses a beautiful sound inside him, wanting to soar freely like an adventurer. In any case, she ends the conversation and prepares for the final attack. Now that the hero pauses to reflect on what was said, the sage tells him to enjoy his freedom, saying she'll be by his side. With a quick thought, the protagonist understands the meaning behind it all. Just as the girl read the flow, rhythm, and timing of each attack, Yudo prepares to create a new rhythm, improvising freely, and Serena quickly notices the change in his behavior. With intense focus, Yudo realizes he shouldn't fight in a way that worries others. In the end, he realizes he was carrying too much without noticing, and that made people trust him too easily. But now the hero decides to stay calm and quickly dodges an incoming attack, determined to follow the advice and enjoy the fight. With a bold move, he begins walking on the attacking musical notes. Then, approaching the girl quickly, he fires 2 energy blasts beside her. In a very creative way, he solidifies the energy to use as a springboard. This gives the protagonist a strong position over his opponent, but instead of making Serena desperate, he makes her proud. She tosses her wand into the air, conceding the fight. A few seconds later, the two lie down and talk about the battle, reflecting on their own mistakes. Serena comments that the biggest weakness of a conductor is not having a finishing move, because the class is primarily supportive. Then the hero explains that he was very worried about his adventuring career. But thanks to Serena's help, he can now smile with a calmer mind. And even happy with the recognition, the girl stands and says there's no need to thank her. After all, she's satisfied too, because she always wanted a duel with the hero. Serena takes the opportunity to get the hero's attention, making him very nervous. Suddenly, she asks if the boy is interested in joining the Silverwings. She admits she's wanted to say this ever since Yudo visited her in the hospital. She explains that the guild's philosophy is to fly high toward the open sky, unhindered by anything. Yudo reflects on what it means for an adventurer to keep flying high. Serena thinks this mindset suits him perfectly. But before anything else, the protagonist asks if he can make a request. When she agrees, Yudo asks that no one stop him from following his path. With the power he's received, he wants to test how far he can go, aiming to reach the top as an adventurer. Serena extends her hand to seal the agreement. With a smile, she asks if anyone could stop the hero, which makes him happy to shake her hand. Grateful for the encounter, Yudo becomes a member of the Silverwings. At night, while sleeping, the protagonist suddenly wakes in a strange dream. He's in a white room and wonders where he is, until he hears a voice calling him, much to his surprise. Yudo Shaban asks who it is, but only sees a large gate chained shut. The firm voice says it's his predecessor. Then a system message asks if the boy accepts the mysterious sage, but the atmosphere feels different from the sages he's known. The voice asks why he's hesitating, since this is a good opportunity. This makes Yudo agree, as everything the system has given him so far has helped a lot. But before accepting, the martial arts sage and the knowledge sage shout for him not to get involved. The mysterious voice ignores the warnings and calls the others weak. Without interruption, she reminds him that Yudo wanted to enter the unknown dungeon. Then an artificial image shows Serena unconscious near the boy. The same goes for Arisa, because the way Yudo is now, he can't protect everyone. Even Kuka seems to manipulate the hero's vision even more. All of this justifies the voice's request to be inherited. At the end of this scene, the system message from the sage appears again. Yudo reaches out to confirm, and the voice praises him, saying they will conquer everything together. But at the last second, someone stops the protagonist from making that decision, to his surprise. The most surprising part is that it's the incarnation of the knowledge sage himself. At that moment, the sage inside the gate grows tired of waiting, and opens a gap in the seal to attack Yudo in his own way. Luckily, our hero is protected by the same man who helped him before. While Yudo watched helplessly, a knowledge sage was trapped in his place. Even so, he didn't panic and only said, "Light to the final successor," until he was swallowed by the portal, which closed a few seconds later. As soon as the portal closed, our hero woke up in bed, startled, realizing it had all been a dream. For now, he tried to figure out who that shadowy figure was, and who the other person had been. In his mind, the image of the sage was vague, and the memories were confusing. The next day, at the Silverwings Guild headquarters, a meeting takes place with 6 members present. At the head of the table, Serena welcomes Yudo to his new guild. First, she asks the boy to explain what the guild means to him. Because of his difficult past, the hero responds that it's basically a business that exploits adventurers for low pay, which embarrasses a few of the girls. Serena then explains that guilds are organizations that handle dungeon-related work. Based on adventurer rankings, guilds go from S to F, and tasks vary depending on the rank. For them, dungeons are the main source of income, and for a while they'll have to rely on renting the Old Alliance South High School. The hero asks what the annual estimate is. Only high-level adventurers can reach these numbers, so the same lady from before shows Yudo the figure on her laptop. Unexpectedly, the total required for a hero is about 900 billion. As the protagonist's soul leaves his body, Serena explains that it's just a projection. They say it's now time for the main event. To maintain an A-rank guild, at least 2 adventurers of the same rank must be registered. Because of the recent incident, they need to find someone besides Serena, which is difficult since there aren't many A-rank female adventurers available. At that moment, all the girls look at our heroine, causing a shout to echo through the building. The easiest option now is for the protagonist to take the exam to level up. Yudo finds the idea of becoming A rank intimidating, but first they need to gather achievements. Serena asks Mrs. Lamino to bring the materials, which soon appear in large stacks in front of the protagonist. Behind them, Serena comments with a smile that the hero must complete everything in 3 months. With that huge pile in front of him, Yudo signals for the other girls to avoid looking at him and thinks Serena is a boss who pressures her subordinates. Sometime later, in an A-rank dungeon called Count's Dream Trail, Yudo believes he arrived early because Serena hired help, but then Canada shows up, saying he's been there for a while. He's the assistant. To update the conversation, the blonde says he joined the Abyss Guild as an intern, but he says he can't afford to fall behind, which worries Yudo because of the competitiveness. Even so, Yudo says everything's fine. Since no one is watching today, he tells his partner not to get nervous or get into trouble. A little annoyed, the blonde stays calm and advises Yudo not to hesitate like last time if he wants to level up, which makes the protagonist more confident in trusting him. With nothing else to discuss, the two decide to tackle the cursed dungeon. Sometime later, on the dungeon's top floor, the warriors face the boss and are about to unleash a powerful combo that could decide the fight. Right after the attack, the blonde turns and asks if they can win, but the monster is still standing. More than that, it's laughing at them. The protagonist realizes the situation is bad, but is the first to be hit by the monster's counterattack. The blonde is also struck, and both fall to the ground nearly defeated. Canada didn't expect the Count to quickly harden his own blood to form a weapon. The hero realizes the previous attack was a trap to lure them in for a joint strike. Then the vampire begins to drain the two warriors' blood. With some kind of telekinesis, he shapes the blood into a powerful spear to finish them. This S-rank monster is a vampire lord named Vlad Astra. The blonde quickly realizes the enemy strengthened his spear by drinking their blood. The hero says the more they bleed, the stronger the vampire becomes. If that's the case, Yudo says he'll have to strike deep enough to prevent the enemy from regenerating. Canada agrees and says they'll cut him in half. While the hero attacks head-on, the blonde strikes from the flanks. With one on each side, the hero takes the first step, but Vlad laughs as if he already predicted it and is ready to counter. Suddenly, the hero's instant prediction fails, and the vampire disappears, causing the two boys to collide because they couldn't stop in time. Canada gets angry, and Yudo apologizes, explaining that Vlad vanished. The blonde believes the hero is someone who can see beyond all of this. Yudo thinks about the skill he tried to use, but realizes that relying too much on abilities without combat sense is a mistake. In the end, it was exactly as Serena said, just like what happened against the Lancer. The hero won with the Celestial Sword, but that power wasn't his own. It was another automatic battle. That's why, if he wants to reach his goals, he can't rely solely on abilities. With the hero confused, the blonde comments that the Yudo he knows is confident. He always finds the best move in any situation. Hearing that from a friend makes the protagonist reflect. He thinks he just needs to give his best now, because that's all he can do. In the fight, the monster resumes control of its blood, creating stingers that erupt from the ground. The warriors have to dodge at the last second to avoid being impaled alive, but the part of the stinger that touches sunlight disappears, which catches the protagonist's attention toward a nearby window. Conveniently, it's already daytime outside. Then the protagonist yells for his companion to stop the vampire's movements for a moment. Although he doesn't like it, since it sounds like an order, Canada obeys, planting his sword in the ground and commenting that it feels like a child's game. Using his taunting ability, the blonde challenges the enemy to come at him. The vampire charges to impale the Holy Knight, but Canada holds the weapon, which encourages the protagonist. He prepares his aura blade and throws it forcefully at the top of the mansion. The moment a crack appears in the ceiling, sunlight pours in. Since the vampire is trapped in the middle, Vlad Astra is struck by his greatest weakness, the sun, and disintegrates, leaving only ashes on the ground. The blonde remarks that they've won, and the hero thanks his luck. Even so, he knows he couldn't have defeated the enemy alone. He thinks his goal of ranking up is still far off. Then a system message appears, agreeing. It's a message from the martial arts sage. When he appears, the protagonist is very surprised. Without wasting time, the sage comments that the hero still needs a lot of experience because he trusts his own power too much. At first, the hero wants to argue, but he accepts that it's true. Even so, the sage says circumstances have changed, and he can no longer stay out of it. To explain, he asks if the boy remembers a recent dream. It was that dream with the gate closed by chains. The sage says the limit is near, but before that, the protagonist needs to grow stronger. Fortunately, the martial arts sage opens a portal and says he will personally train the boy. The offer is left to the hero's choice, and he says there's no need to ask. Yudo accepts, leaving the sage quite proud. Before leaving, the protagonist warns the blonde that he's entering a dangerous zone and asks Canada to stay behind. The blonde doesn't fully understand, but asks not to be underestimated. He realizes Yudo will get stronger, so he thinks he can stay out of it. The sage agrees to take both warriors who now must face this new challenge together. Thrown through the portal, the boys hit the ground and get up, not knowing where they are. The protagonist comments that this is where the master said he would train them. The blonde points behind, showing a giant tree visible in the area. A message appears saying this is the White World, where 1 year there equals 1 day on Earth. Even so, time alone won't be enough. Canada asks where the master is, causing fear in the warriors, because suddenly the girl appears in the middle of the White Hall, surrounded by dark energy. And it's at that moment that the hero introduces the blonde to his new master. Canada confesses he imagined the master would be a muscular man or an old sage. To break that idea, the martial arts sage approaches, coming within inches of the blonde. Using a kung fu technique, a straight punch, she hits Canada in the chest, causing him to faint and die. According to the system, Yudo gets very angry when Wing tries to create an aura sword. A message appears saying abilities are prohibited in that place. Even after several attempts, the message keeps appearing. Then the girl calls them crazy, because the goal of the training is to make them not depend on abilities, which surprises the hero. Without wasting time, the martial artist advances toward the protagonist, attacking with only one finger. A few seconds later, the blonde wakes up asking what happened. When he looks beside him, he sees Yudo lying with a death message. The sage explains that if the blonde doesn't want to die that way again, he needs to attack with everything, and the real will to die in the process. Canada finds the master's craziness amusing. Since it means they'll die anyway, he decides to fight. But it won't be easy, because the sage counters and throws the boy away. This time, it's the protagonist who wakes up, and the girl signals for him to approach her. This results in several consecutive defeats for the two adventurers at the hands of the master. Within a few minutes, they had already accumulated 10 deaths, a number the sage found ridiculous. They even began to doubt their own abilities. Then the girl says crying won't help. Feeling a bit empathetic, she decides to change things. From that point on, anyone who withstands a strike earns the right to learn a secret technique, which makes the two very curious. Quickly, the boys remove the heavy clothes that hindered their movements until they're ready to fight. The sage mocks the gesture, evaluating their greed, because stealing techniques to gain power and defeat the sage is exactly the training they're doing. She hopes they can finish while the death count is still low. Despite that, worried, the two accept the challenge. But soon, the hero's death count rises to 45. Over time, the blonde had died almost 300 times to the sage. Later, the number reached 800, nearly 2,000. More than triple, 5 times more, pushing the counter to high numbers. Even so, they continued determined to reach their goal. In the end, the martial arts sage didn't teach them any techniques, but the many deaths gave them what they needed to learn. For the blonde, there were too many techniques to steal on his own. Even so, while fighting, he wanted to master at least half of them. Suddenly, he lands a strike that breaks the girl's defense. Quickly, the blonde shouts to the protagonist that this is the chance. Having fought so many times, Yudo replicates the 1-inch punch technique. Since there were so many techniques, the two decide to combine their skills, because only then could they reach the master. Finally, the martial arts sage falls to her knees before the boys, who are confused at first but quickly cheer when they realize they've completed the training. She feels relieved, as she had been annoyed with their hair for a long time because of their poor skills. Now, with the energy they emit completely different, the master has to admit how much the two have improved. Without delay, the sage asks if they should head back. They agree excitedly, but only after achieving a one-on-one victory over her. The girl pauses to think, but soon bursts out laughing. Then she calls the boys closer, asking them to come to her again. Back in the real world, in the same dungeon they had left, it is already night. The protagonist asks how many hours have passed. The blonde comments that he's already feeling jet-lagged. From a pool of blood on the floor, something suddenly begins to rise. The protagonist watches the strange form ahead and asks what it is, but no explanation is needed, as it soon starts to float. From the spheres of blood, Vlad Astra reappears, leaving the two boys surprised that he's still alive. Even though it seems like a bad situation, the hero says it's perfect. After all, it's the best chance to show the results of their training. The vampire grows angry at the boy's confidence and curses him in a strange language. While still speaking, the protagonist appears in front of him like a flash. Before he can react, he punches the count in the chest, making him cough up blood from the impact. Yudo comments excitedly that it's working, but the blonde thinks he's cheating. Not wanting to be left behind, Canada also advances, and using his skills, strikes the vampire, sending him flying. The blonde is surprised he can fight without using any abilities, but instead, the vampire is angrier than ever, and suddenly plunges his own arm into his chest, ripping out his heart. Then he crushes the heart with his hands, even turning the skin around it blood-colored. Thus, the immortal king awakens as a powerful SSL-level monster. Vlad Astra continues speaking strangely as he feels his new power. But the feeling lasts only briefly, as the two warriors advance and pierce the vampire with a combined attack. Surprisingly, that is enough to defeat him for good, triggering a new achievement message in the system. Outside the dungeon, our hero comments that the day was very exhausting, which was expected since they had spent years training from afternoon to night. Because of that, they got a little closer to their goal, and the blonde immediately agrees. A little closer to the sea, Canada says he has something to tell before they part ways. He explains that a large combat operation happens every 4 years, and he will participate to the protagonist's surprise. Then, the blonde suggests it would be a shame if the protagonist didn't participate as well. He says he'll be waiting for him. He says goodbye, mentioning that the next time they meet, they'll be rivals, which makes Yudo reflect. Later, a hero finally arrives home, where Arisa informs him that Suzuka came to visit. While changing clothes, a friend apologizes for arriving so late. Yudo says he'll accompany her to the station after a quick shower, but doesn't notice that his now muscular body catches the attention of the two girls, who leave thinking the change is strange. Even so, the hero showers calmly, reflecting as he looks in the mirror. Before the training, the boy had struggled a lot against Vlad Astra, but now he managed to defeat him in an instant. Moreover, he didn't use any abilities, only his own strength. That's why the hero thinks he can now aim for bigger things, like SES rank. Not forgetting what his companions said at their farewell, Yudo mentally asks them to wait for him. As days pass, the hero's achievements are impressive, completing multiple missions in a row. The news becomes so important that it reaches the Kuju Group headquarters, specifically the CEO's office. Ka, the CEO of the Kuju Group, still doesn't believe Yudo is trustworthy, but an advisor disagrees, saying that the management of a dungeon should be in the hands of an S-rank guild, and Ka agrees, praising his colleague's logic. In any case, a photo of the hero alongside Ka and 4 others is placed on the desk. In recent years, guilds around the world have fought fiercely in large-scale combat operations. This time, Ka wants Kiroshima Yudo to participate. The advisor asks if there's no other option, since the spot in Japan should go to the CEO's son, but it's revealed that the Lancer in question deserted from the United States. In any case, the real plan is to use this chance to eliminate Yudo, because without him, controlling the school dungeon will be easy. The man says he'll start preparing, and the CEO says he'll count on him. This man is Koji Tsukushiro, an A-rank hunter and leader of the Abyss Guild. Among a pile of mission papers, all have something in common, the mission complete stamp. Because of this, and with the deposits already empty, Serena comments in a meeting that she always knew the hero had potential, but she didn't expect him to complete everything so quickly. Yudo is now a C-rank adventurer, and on top of that, the marketing is excellent, because despite over 100 adventurers signing up, it was our hero who took first place in the event called Next Adventurer. Yudo says he didn't plan any of this, but it's proof that his efforts are being recognized. At 10:35, the phone rings at the location. When Serena asks who's calling, she's surprised to hear it's Kaji from the Abyss Guild. As a special guest, he talks with the hero and the girl, and wastes no time, handing over a briefcase full of money to persuade Serena to accept his proposal. Kaji says it's a small gift for all their help, especially the heroes. The girl thinks it's too much of a reward, and Kaji praises her perception. In fact, he's about to reveal the real reason for his visit. When they look at the laptop screen, both are shocked. It's a summons for a large-scale combat operation. Knowing what this means, Serena panics, thinking the hero has no chance at all. But convincingly, Kaji says he wouldn't have come personally if that were the case. Besides, the protagonist has been trying to build a good reputation, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A national competition, something he had mentioned before. Seeing the hero deep in thought, Kugi compliments him for considering the idea. About 40 years ago, a continental dungeon appeared. It was so important that Yudo even studied it in his history classes at school. Now, Kaji says he'll tell the real story. After an intense battle with the help of the entire world, the island became a controlled dungeon, and after the war, it became known as Atlantis. But there was still a problem that caught Yudo's attention. The dilemma was which country would be responsible for operations in Atlantis. That's because the country controlling this large-scale dungeon would gain unprecedented benefits. Almost every nation that participated in the war wanted a peace, which nearly caused another war. Then, a huge black energy sphere appeared in Parliament. While politicians tried to figure out what it was, the situation only worsened. That day, the system issued a mission to decide who would manage Atlantis. The rule was that each country had to send 5 representatives. Upon hearing this, the protagonist asks aloud which country is behind it. But even today, that remains a mystery. At the time, everyone decided to use the situation to their advantage. In the end, the mission rules didn't change. Each participant receives a badge with a number, and at some point, is randomly teleported to Atlantis. Adventurers must compete to steal badges from each other, while advancing toward the center of the island. Yudo asks what's in the center, and Kugi explains that 8 gates lead to the main arena, so only the 8 adventurers with the most badges can enter the main event. Basically, it's a race, but if someone moves too fast to the gates, they can be overtaken by competitors with more badges. In the end, it's a strategic battle, and of course, anyone who doesn't meet the requirements is eliminated. The 8 winners will fight until only one remains, who will represent the country managing the dungeon. The hero asks why they don't just send S-rank adventurers. Serena explains that participants must be under 25 years old. That's why there aren't many strong adventurers in that age range, and guilds don't want to risk injuring them. But whoever reaches the final stage will be recognized as an A-rank adventurer, and the winner gets an international S-rank license. Serena immediately recalls the philosophy of the Silver Wings. Since they never miss opportunities, the girl and the hero accept the challenge. Later, in the center of Atlantis, a large crowd gathers for the national competition held every 4 years. The host, Lucas, will be responsible for presenting the event. He's currently unemployed, but thanks to Magic's language unification ability, he got the job. Getting straight to the point, participants are waiting in their respective countries. The host reminds everyone to settle any personal matters before the event. Lucas warns that the badge each person received has the power to forcibly teleport them to the island. So it's very important that no one shows up there in an embarrassing situation. The event will start with an exhibition match, where the most suitable competitor will be invited to the stage. This person is the champion of the last competition, and the representative of the United Arab Emirates, Amir Mukhtar. When he appears, he apologizes for making the audience wait. They say in the last competition he showed impressive power to secure victory. He has a unique profession that allows him to transform parts of his body into a dragon. Actually, it's not exactly a profession, but a species. And this form, even after 4 years, is impossible to forget. Before starting, Lucas asks if Amir wants to say something to the world and the adventurers. But for some reason, he doesn't respond, creating an awkward silence. Until he suddenly acts, holding the camera with his claws unexpectedly. Looking directly into the lens, he says he's not satisfied with the previous victory, because what he really wants is to be #1 in the adventurer ranking. It's also revealed that Tidgai's opponent is someone he personally invited and doesn't need teleportation, because he's already far above everyone else. At high speed, the world's greatest adventurer descends without a parachute, landing in the center of the arena completely unharmed. This is the hero known as James Blood, representing the United States. Watching on TV, Yudo, a huge fan, is amazed. So is Sujibitu, who is surprised to see him in that setting. But the fact that the hero is so fascinated is a little strange. Setting that aside, Serena asks Seiza what's happening with Yudo. His sister reveals that he's been researching the fighting styles of other adventurers, which is why there are so many James-related products out there. Yudo has become a devoted fan, and now watching the fight between the two is like a dream come true. In the arena, Amir says he's been waiting for this moment for a long time and advances quickly, claiming he will knock out his opponent before the bell even rings. The attack surprises the audience, but doesn't cause any damage to the American. Mockingly, James asks if the Arab can feel the greatness of America. Even without attacking, Amir doesn't get discouraged and just steps back a little. If James's size is his only weapon, Amir completely changes, saying he won't hold back anymore. His claws and tail appear, and in his full form, he declares he's going all out. But James remains calm. He raises his arms and calls for the support of the people. With the power of the United States, a patriotic crowd begins to gather around him. James strikes a confident pose in his uniform, which excites Amir a lot. Wasting no time, James leaps forward with such force that he almost disappears from the arena until he reaches Amir's side. Even from behind him, James assures that he'll give the audience an exciting fight. Lucas panics but quickly yells to officially start the exhibition match. Still behind his opponent, James says they'll make the most of it, and delivers a strong strike that Amir surprisingly blocks. This time, Amir boasts, asking if the American feels the power of the Middle East. James responds that what matters is intensity. Amir then asks if the adventurer will stay calm during the next attack. Like a dragon, last year's winner releases a jet of fire. James says he doesn't care about dreamers, but responds with a flurry of punches that disperse the flames, sending him flying backward with the wind. James's profession is a hero, which grows stronger as the number of supporters increases, so putting out flames with just the air pressure from a punch is absurd. Lucas narrates excitedly, because now it's a battle between the strongest in the tournament and the most powerful in the world. Commenting on his opponent's profession, Amir says he seems very confident in his own power. James responds that, since the United States is the most powerful nation, anyone carrying the will of the people is also strong. Amir says he'll fight under the American's conditions because he needs to beat him at his peak. He suggests they settle it with a test of strength, and James accepts the challenge. Before the fight resumes, both are filled with determination. Amir says he'll show his final technique. A man worthy of his great opponent. Wings quickly grow on the dragon's back as he flies over the arena. From above, Amir asks if James has the courage to face a direct attack. Confident, James tells him to go ahead. Amir descends engulfed in flames, even more fired up for the fight. Within seconds, he hits James's defense, which the American holds with all his strength. Even so, a shockwave explodes, sending the narrator flying. A cloud of dust and small rocks reaches the spectators in the stands. Most importantly, after this attack, James recognized the enormous power of air. But in reality, the American managed to block something that seemed impossible for a human. More confident than ever, James advances, thanks for the fun, and lands a powerful punch on the dragon's face. This time, the blow sends him crashing into the arena wall, dangerously close to Lucas. As Amir is thrown out of the ring, the winner of the competition is officially declared. James's blood. Returning to his normal form, the Arab understands why the American is so strong. The more he fights, the more he grows. Additionally, in a noble gesture, he offers to help the announcer if needed. Either way, the event must move on to the next stage. And since James' son, Noah, will participate, everyone must stay alert. In a slightly distant house, a boy laughs loudly, saying his relative is embarrassing him. This boy is Noah. Before the fight, a girl wishes him luck, and he thanks her. Noah also promises to fight in a way that honors his title as the son of a hero. Meanwhile, our hero, with his badge on his chest, announces that he's leaving. Stuffa tells Yudo to give his best, and Arisa promises to prepare a delicious meal when he returns. Serena simply waves and wishes him good luck, which our hero returns. A little later, in the south of Atlantis, Yudo appears atop a mountain. Above him, a huge bird flies, and next to him is a giant lizard. This is Atlantis, and seeing something like this appear out of nowhere, the hero comments that dungeons are really impressive. Closing his eyes, he senses the presence of 50 people. Even while staying discreet earlier, Yudo notes that these hidden people don't seem like referees. Then 5 assassins emerge from their hiding spots to try to kill our hero. In the center of the arena, James asks the host if the event is starting now. Lucas announces that the grand mission, with over 1,000 participants, called the Conquest of Atlantis, officially begins. Back to our hero. One of the assassins comments that they got there by chance, but since the man makes no effort to hide his hostility, Yudo just laughs. The hooded man says there's no need to be so careful. After all, the competition has just started, and he attacks immediately. But, unlucky for the assassin, Yudo reacts quickly, and only sees the protagonist's fist hit his face. The assassin falls to the ground, defeated instantly, yielding a badge to Yudo. Frightened, the others start casting spells. Several long-range attacks are launched at our hero. One of the assassins thinks the boy won't be able to escape the magical barrier, but he's wrong, because Yudo not only dodges but uses the evasions to get close to the mages. With a punch to the ground, he sends them all flying. With ease, the hero earns 3 more badges. Then he mocks the last adventurer, asking exactly where the barrier is. In the same place as the two, the event camera was positioned. Thus, Yudo's brilliant move is broadcast to everyone, even to the previous edition's champion, who is surprised by the mageless prodigy. James comments that the boy was also the one who saved the dungeon from collapsing. Amir finds that very interesting. Back in the fight, the protagonist asks if the assassins are being sent by the same employer since he's been attacked so frequently, and since that's exactly the case, the warrior is left speechless. Some time ago, the group received a mission from the Kuju organization. According to them, even though the hero is called a sage, he's a hand-to-hand combat specialist. Additionally, since his abilities were supposed to be at most B rank, the assassins felt confident. For this reason, the CEO shouted that this wasn't a game. But anyway, whoever killed Yudo would receive a generous reward. So obviously, the risk was high. Since the money would cover the retirement of all 5, there was no excuse for failure. Behind the scenes, they agreed that the assassins would be teleported to the same place and needed to act quickly. Back in the present, the assassin stammers, complaining that he didn't know any of this. He also shouts that the protagonist's rank should only be Class B. Yudo then explains that he never lied during the promotion exam and always did his best, so the only explanation left is that his opponent, unfortunately, underestimated his true power. From afar, another adventurer watches all the destruction caused by the protagonist's attack. Holding a badge, he comments that things in the south seem to be getting interesting. Then he raises the coin and asks if his partner feels the same. Curiously, this partner turns out to be a giant, monstrous feline. After having his badge stolen, an adventurer begs to escape the animal's jaws. But since his master doesn't respond, the monster simply acts according to its nature. And so the desired man prepares to continue the hunt for the next adventure. This is the mage representing the United Kingdom, Max Henry. Besides the tiger that already appeared, he controls several other monsters. The scene shifts to a commercial building in Indonesia. A man in a suit asks, worried, if it's really okay to let that person participate. After all, that girl was responsible for causing a dungeon invasion in the country, becoming the internationally wanted adventurer known as Asahena Kuka. Elsewhere in the competition, Canada defeats an enemy, and Noah isn't far behind. Meanwhile, the protagonist moves quickly through the tall grass until he passes an archer hiding in a bush. As the archer prepares the arrow, the young man finds it funny how easy it is to sneak through the southern zone, especially since there's no other path to the center. He fires the arrow, trying to secure another badge, but when the projectile is about to hit the hero from behind, he notices at the last moment and catches it, leaving the archer completely shocked. Yudo then uses a body spin to throw the arrow back with even more force, striking the enemy and easily defeating him along with his previous victims. Once again, all of the protagonist's accomplishments are being broadcast, exciting his companions with his performance. Looking at the rankings, surprisingly, the hero takes the lead over his main rival, Noah. Speaking of him, the boy is from the blood orphanage and the adopted son of James. Lucas then asks if this position was expected. In response, the American says he's been observing Kiroshima for a while, so he's not surprised. Lucas asks if that means Yudo has a chance to win, but James says he's not sure. However, he adds that a true hero never disappoints. In that case, it only remains to see who can handle the pressure to become the true hero. Without wasting time, the host announces the second phase of the competition. This is because the skills an exceptional adventurer needs go beyond combat, including protecting people from dungeons. With the signal given, challenging areas appear, and fierce monsters attack the competitors. Lucas says this is an opportunity, because whoever conquers these areas will receive rewards proportional to the difficulty. Conquering tougher zones can give an advantage and even change the course of the competition. For this reason, the host asks the audience not to miss the drama of the second half of the tournament. Suddenly, the protagonist receives a message on his communicator. It's instructions about the challenge zone, where adventurers who defeat monsters earn badges. At this moment, the hero almost has the badges needed for the gates, but he believes this second round will change everything. So he wants to clear at least one area to secure his position, and the closest one is right ahead. In the southwest challenge zone, a girl fights a monster resembling a Cerberus called Orthos, but she's not in good condition to face such a large monster. One of Orthos' heads attacks quickly. The girl dodges and prepares to counterattack with her fan. She spins in the air to increase the force of her strike and hits the monster's head, but Orthos responds with a strong attack that sends the pink-haired girl flying and rolling across the ground. Because of this, she can't keep fighting, but she still pushes herself because she can't afford to lose. She went through a lot to get here and is now called the heroine of all. Chain stands up, even injured, and asks the audience to remember her name. From behind a tree, a hooded and suspicious man mocks the girl's profession. The situation worsens because he was prepared to steal the reward. In the end, Yudo was also on his way, so a confrontation between the three was inevitable. On an ordinary day, a huge tower appeared out of nowhere. This happened 3 years ago, when the towers appeared out of nowhere and caused chaos. At that time, the pink-haired girl felt powerless because of the low number of adventurers in her country. The military tried to intervene, but even when they fired, their bullets had no effect. So the fate of those on the front lines was certain. Among the soldiers, some helped with the evacuation. As the population panicked, the girl was in the middle of the chaos as well. Soon after, people finally found a way to escape by sea. But since everyone was desperate, there were bound to be casualties. Kin's friend, for her part, didn't hesitate to ask her to come along. But what the girl thought was, where could we possibly escape on such a small island? Her friend was sure no one there could face the monster, but Ten was still lost in thought. At one moment, while the parents ran with a little girl, she dropped her toy. And since it was an important doll, the girl ran back to get it, leaving her parents and Ten in a panic. Especially because in front of them, a huge monster had already trampled and destroyed the doll before she could reach it. Seeing this, holding a similar doll in her hands, Ten couldn't take it and ran forward to handle the problem her way. She was small, but her inspiration was a very cool and cute heroine from a popular anime. Most importantly, Ten admired her and wanted to be like her. So this time, the girl went straight to the child without hesitation and gave her the doll, saying it was a gift, making the little girl happy, just as Ten had hoped. Because of that decision, the girl stood in front of the monster and charged full force, believing that if she could be like the heroine she admired, she could do the same. Back in the present, the girl leaps onto the monster with an attack that emits colorful energy. This time, Orthos is slightly disoriented by the strike. 3 years have passed, and she awakened her profession. But her country, Vietnam, is still on the defensive, while neighboring countries refuse to help. If she wins here, at least she can overcome the difficulties and make her voice heard worldwide. Maybe some adventurer somewhere in the world will be willing to help. In the fight, the monster charges quickly. Although she feels weak for relying on others, the girl says she will manage. She jumps again and uses another spin to strike with even more force. And fortunately, it works. Suddenly, a system reward appears, granting 100 badges for defeating Orthos. With that, her goal of passing the preliminaries should be secured. But someone else suddenly appears and attacks her from behind, throwing her to the ground with a punch. With a malicious smile, the man says he's been waiting for her. Stein, a boxer, had been waiting for the moment the girl would defeat the monster. He was in 4th place, but now he defeated Ten, who was leading, and humiliated her by stepping on her. He doesn't hesitate to admit that he got lucky facing a pretty girl. Still on the ground, Ten asks if he had been watching her the whole time. The boy responds that patience is essential for an adventurer, but she says that's just cowardice. The boxer feels offended and kicks the girl, saying there are no rules in a fight. To him, stepping over others is necessary to stand out, and anything goes to survive because that's what adventurers do. Ten says she's never liked people like that, but Stein just mocks her. To him, that kind of attitude is childish. Before leaving, something hits the boy on the head, irritating him. It's a magical projectile that Ten launched with her last strength to try to recover the badges. Siam returns, very angry because he tried to be kind to the girl. But since she chose to attack him, he clenches his fist and threatens to send her straight to the grave, showing that he enjoys hurting women. He says he will start by destroying her face. It almost happens, as an explosion follows his punch. Luckily, at the last moment, someone interrupts the attack with their own hands. And since there are supposedly no rules in a fight, our hero asks if he can interfere too. Of course, the boxer asks who the boy is, but the hero responds with a direct strike to the aggressor's chest. He throws him against a tree with such force that the trunk can't withstand the impact. The boy falls to the ground, coughing, not understanding what happened. He yells, wanting to know what the protagonist did to cause that result. Theoretically, his diamond gloves should crush even iron, so the hero suggests that maybe it's the user's lack of skill, which makes the boxer furious. The cameras focus on the protagonist, and with this new action, Amir spills his drink, surprised at what he sees. James explains that this ex-boxer caused many problems until his license was revoked. Even so, his skill is high, and the force of his punches, amplified by his powers, is comparable to missiles. Lucas asks if Kiroshima managed to stop him easily, but in reality, the boy didn't stop him. He only redirected the attack. He received the punch with his left hand, and channeled the force through his relaxed body, using his right. Amir comments that he's heard such techniques exist in ancient Eastern martial arts, and wonders if a sage can do this. Facing the hero, Cayenne asks if helping adventurers from other countries isn't being too soft, but the hero replies that he hates people who steal the effort of others. Cayenne says he chose the safest and most reliable path. Although he wanted to avoid trouble, he pulls a cube from his pocket and suggests they settle it in the ring. When he throws it to the ground, an arena called the Battle Box is summoned. There, no one can leave until one of them can't continue. Takes off his shirt, saying he's ready for hand-to-hand combat. Our hero also removes his jacket, repeating the same confident words. This worries the boxer a little, as the boy's body looks like that of a seasoned veteran. Without delay, face-to-face, the sound of the bell signals the start. San attacks, trying to win in a single round, but his jab is blocked, and trying a lower strike doesn't change the outcome. Then, the hero shows a confident expression that irritates the boxer. Wasting no time, San charges for a strong hit, but the one applying the pressure is actually Udo. Once again, while defending a punch, he redirects the impact back. Cyan panics, wanting to know who this unknown guy is. Even so, our hero warns him to get ready and lands a strike to his stomach. The crime of attacking a woman not only makes the boxer lose consciousness, but also throws him against the ropes before he falls on his back. With the fight over, the ring dissolves, and the hero recovers the stolen badges, including the boxer's. Thus, the protagonist earns his 10th badge. Throughout all this, the girl stays silent, not wanting to confront him. But she didn't need to, because Yudo returned the badge on his own. With a smile, the hero praises how brave she was not to give up, even in the worst conditions. Still too shy to face Yudo, Ten thanks him, but forces herself to look, thinking she might ask for help. However, Yudo doesn't pay attention, noticing a badge on the ground that he thinks she dropped during the fight. He places the badge back on her shirt, asking her to be careful not to lose another one. Without giving her a chance to speak, the hero says they'll see each other at the main event. Afterward, he leaves, leaving Ten quite embarrassed. Switching scenes, Noah works alongside Kenna amid total chaos. The two are facing the internationally wanted criminal, known as Kilka Asahena. Canada even feels a bit embarrassed for being Japanese. After all, sharing the same nationality with a criminal like her is shameful for him. A few minutes earlier, the blonde had been fighting James's adopted son, and the battle was getting intense. Noah was impressed with Canada's skills, thinking Yudo was the only one he needed to worry about in Japan. The blonde replied that he understood the warning, but they should have researched better. As the son of a hero, Canada acknowledges that Noah is also incredible, and thinks the protagonist might be jealous for having faced someone so strong while hunting badges. In any case, since Noah already had 11 badges, it was a good chance to gain several at once. Before anything else, James's adopted son asks if the blonde wants to escape, But Kenna responds that she's going to teach him a lesson. That's her motto. In the Komuro family, running from a fight isn't an option. Instead of being angry, Noah finds that incredible. Without further ado, the blonde announces his new skill, learned specifically for today. It's called Holy Knight's Determination, which increases physical abilities based on damage he has suffered in the past. Noah responds that his ability is similar. He has heroic quality, which boosts his strength based on damage he has dealt before. The opponent's confident tone irritates the blonde, especially because it sounds very similar to his own. But Noah attacks, saying they'll settle this now. Naturally, their attacks are about to collide when suddenly a strong sensation grabs both their attention. Out of nowhere, a girl appears between them, blocking the boys' attacks and forcing them to step back and reconsider. The girl starts laughing, mocking the Japanese candidate because, to her, that power is ridiculous. Now able to see her better, Canada realizes it's Asahena Kyoka. After easily blocking the attacks of two of the main candidates, Lucas introduces her as Indonesia's representative. Only then does he realize this person is Asahena. The same goes for the spectators. She was supposed to be an internationally wanted criminal. But when checking the system, everything becomes clear. The truth is she threatened the Indonesian government to be forcibly registered as a competitor, and since the final decision lies with the island, no authority can interfere. James, meanwhile, laughs heartily, not caring about the past of someone wanting to compete. But laughing isn't how Amir wants to handle this situation, especially since this person caused a dungeon collapse in his country. Naturally, the Arab wants to eliminate her right then and there, but James, to his surprise, interrupts. Maturely, the American says they're in the middle of a tournament and have no right to interfere. Moreover, James wants to see the intense battles of the new generation. Even irritated, Amir accepts and stays to watch. Meanwhile, at the protagonist's house, Suzuka falls off her chair upon seeing who the person is. The internationally wanted criminal everyone's talking about is her sister. Back in the fight, Canada shouts that it's not time to fight, and Noah understands. Asahena mocks, saying it's typical for the United States to fake friendship with Japan, even without knowing what's happening behind the scenes. Before the fight begins, Canada warns Noah to pay attention, as they're going to face a dual-class adventurer, swordsman, and mage. But unexpectedly, the girl opens a rift in space-time and disappears. She doesn't vanish completely, reappearing behind Noah, almost knocking him over. At the last second, Canada pushes the American, and both of them fall to the ground. Noah tries to apologize, but the blonde says it's not the time for that. In that moment, Canada realizes how much he misses Yudo, because even the son of a hero isn't enough now. Without wasting time, the girl combines a physical strike with an energy explosion, and a massive fireball hits both of them. Then, the criminal uses the environment to her advantage, creating a wall of fire to block their escape. She walks slowly toward the boys, warning them not to annoy her. She says she's here to have a lot of fun. At first, the girl stores her sword back in the spatial rift and while casting magic, tells the boys to fight with everything they've got. Leading the defense, Canada talks to Noah to make sure they protect each other. Quickly, the blonde moves forward and says he'll clear the way. At that moment, all Canada can remember is the training he had with Udo. As the girl unleashes bursts of dark energy, he recalls the master's strikes engraved in his sword. Because of that, Canada isn't afraid to move forward against her attacks. Now is the time to show the fighting style he developed. This way, all the effort during training won't have been in vain. He then draws another sword and surrounds both with electric magic, showing his power. Asahena finds it interesting to see a holy knight wielding two swords but responds with even stronger attacks, wanting to test how far the boy can go. Even worried, the blonde continues defending himself. This gives Noah a chance to get closer from behind without worrying about the magical blasts. In seconds, it's time for the blonde to make space for the hero's son, who prepares a powerful punch, looking like it's over. But Asahena stays bored, thinking the strategy is weak. To prove it, she inserts her arms into spatial rifts and, surprisingly, applies a distant chokehold, stopping the boy from advancing. Canada takes advantage of the pause to attack the criminal from behind, but she isn't concerned, because she can use magic even without her arms. Still, Canada has a plan in mind and feels excited. He releases his sword quickly and attacks with his fists. Even though he's never tried before, he mimics the master's punch. Blood spurts, and he thinks he hit her. But the truth is, Asahena laughs at the blonde, having redirected the strike through a rift in her chest to hit Noah. Canada rushes to apologize for the accident, but Noah says it's fine. It was a precise hit. It becomes clear to both that the girl is a tough opponent. Floating on the battlefield, Asahena asks if they really think this place is safe. Then, Canada senses something approaching and pushes Noah away, but the girl won't let that happen. She activates an ability called Golden Silence, which freezes the abilities of weaker opponents. Because of this, Canada immediately falls to the ground, leaving Noah very worried. Without wasting time, Asahena brings her sword back through the temporal rift and unleashes a wave of energy with her sonic blade. Laughing excitedly, Asahena wants to see if the boy will abandon his partner or die protecting her. Either option works for her, as long as she's entertained. Canada isn't in good shape, and soon a powerful explosion happens. But when he opens his eyes, he realizes he's still alive. That's because someone stepped in to protect him, now considering him a partner. Asahena gets irritated by this, so she puts her arms into the spatial rift and starts defeating multiple adventurers, stealing their badges. Canada can't believe she stole so many badges in a second, and no one there understands the level difference between them. With another portal opened, Asahena promises that next time they meet, the fun will be even greater. But she admits it will only happen if they can catch her, and then she disappears. With his injuries, Noah thinks he can't continue, but Canada quickly offers to bandage the boy's arm. Noah shouts that since the blonde can still fight, he should take his badge and run, but Canada yells louder, saying he needs to return the favor. This fight will have to wait until the main event, Until then, the blonde asks them to stay together. With little time left, Kaneda walks toward the objective, carrying Noah. In the center of the arena, Lucas announces that many adventurers are already arriving. It's time to show the audience who's already confirmed for the finals. With 157 badges, the criminal Kuka Asahena leads the competition. Next, Max Henry surprises with 149 badges. Then comes the hero's son, James, who got hurt in the last fight but, with the support of the Holy Knight, has 148 badges. Finally, the last to be presented is Ten, who finished with 112 badges thanks to a reward. Only 3 spots remain. Kaneda thinks at least one person should drop out of the tournament, but that idea isn't accepted. However, instead of hoping for fewer competitors, Ten wanted that person to show up in time. And thanks to her prayers, the Japanese survivor of the collapsed dungeon, Yudo Kiroshima, appears. As for his achievements, with an incredible 248 badges, our hero entered the competition. Finally, the ranking ends, and the final tournament begins. But before that, the host asks everyone to check the special system to enjoy the main event. All of this is shown on the huge digital screen above the arena, while the program is broadcast on LED displays. This is exclusive Atlantis technology that measures and analyzes battles, assigning scores to the adventurer's skills. Lucas then announces that everyone will be assessed using the mirror, noting that the average score for strong results is around 1,000 points. Analyzing the situation, the total power of the Arab competitors exceeds 7,000 points, which was expected from someone that strong. The strongest adventurer, James Blood, has an impressive score of 9,300 points. Because of this, Amir starts doubting the system's accuracy, since he's almost 2,000 points behind. Regardless, Lucas informs the audience that the participants' scores will be displayed for the event. Kaneda, the first to be evaluated, has a total of 4,500 points. Keen, on the other hand, has a slightly lower score, with 3,800 points. Next, Noah's assessment reveals 4,500 power points. Max Henry appears with 4,300 points. Zuru, a previously unshown participant, scores 4 to 900 points. And Reed Helixson, in the same category, has exactly the same score. At the top is Asahena, with an astounding 10,000 points, leaving Noah quite surprised. Something like that is unbelievable for the adventurers, even surpassing James's stats. The girl takes advantage of the moment, impressing everyone with her strength. Kaneda felt it during the battle, but didn't realize the difference was so huge. If things continued this way, her victory would be possible. Although no one knows her true goal, the world would essentially be under her control, creating a massive crisis. Now it's time for the last participant to be assessed, our protagonist. Unexpectedly, the technology encounters an error trying to measure his total power. Lucas becomes concerned, thinking the system might be malfunctioning, but our hero believes it's the work of his successor, who is hiding his true power. The spectators interpret this as a sign that Yudo's power is so immense, it can't even be measured. Yudo feels relieved, while Kaneda doesn't understand what's happening. From James to Asahena, everyone is excited. Max, however, doesn't believe the results, especially because the boy's physical strength alone is worth 4,800 points. For this reason, the Brit thinks everyone should keep an eye on him during the tournament. With a shout, Lucas announces that the hero's true power will be revealed once the fight begins. The tournament key that everyone wanted to know has been revealed. Since our hero will face the winner of the first battle, he looks at Kaneda, because if the blonde wins, they'll face each other in the semifinals. Both take it seriously. Until then, no matter what happens, both ensure they won't lose. Without further delay, the first part of the tournament will be between Asahena and Noah, the favorites. Noah is nervous to enter the ring with the girl, but Kaneda reassures him, telling him to do his best. Even without much confidence, Noah promises to make the fight worth it. As the two take their positions in the arena, the other participants climb the floating chairs and disappear, leaving only the challengers in the center. Asahena asks Noah if his hands are still of any use. Noah throws away the bandage, saying there's no need to worry, because his friends in the medical team helped him a lot. Without delay, the fight to decide the winner of the first battle of the final tournament is about to begin. To take revenge for his recent humiliation, Noah attacks as soon as the gong rings. Unfortunately, his first strike only hits the ground, as the girl easily dodges. Even so, Noah tries a kick from behind, but it's useless. Then, the hero's son attempts a stronger attack, but his fist goes through a portal. When this happens, the girl asks if Noah knows what will happen to his arm if she closes the rift. Now realizing the situation, the warrior uses all his willpower to close the portal, which excites Asahena, as he seems ready to show more than last time. The boy asks if the girl forgot that he is a hero. By showing his power, he strengthens himself. With the crowd watching, he becomes better than ever. Even so, when one of his strikes approaches, the girl defends with a long-range spell that hits the boy and also sends Dibris flying into the stands. A child runs to protect themselves in their father's arms. Then, Asahena asks if the so-called hero won't help the audience. But since it's a 3D hologram, the boy says no real person will get hurt, which makes James react with a mix of disappointment and boredom toward Asahena. This time, the girl goes on the attack, pulling her sword from the temporal rift, but the boy blocks it at the last moment. Even so, little by little, the warrior's strength keeps decreasing, and the criminal's final strike drags Noah, destroying the arena floor. For someone who boasts about being a hero, Asahena says he's nothing. Without much explanation, she raises her weapon, saying he doesn't need to understand everything. But she also makes it clear she doesn't need fake explanations while summoning dozens of black energy orbs. Noah still doesn't understand what she means by doesn't need to understand. Already tired, Asahena says goodbye to the boy by unleashing all those attacks at once. When his health bar reaches 0, no one screams in pain or falls face first to the ground, and Asahena becomes the clear winner. A silence takes over the arena, and even Canada is stunned. Udo, on the other hand, jumps from his seat, realizing the criminal is planning something more. When she raises her sword, Lucas shouts for the protection team to stop her. But when the strike comes down, no one is there in time. No one except one person who arrived at the last moment to defend James' son. That was our hero, and Asahena says it's a pleasure to meet him, already hurt for not stopping the attack properly. Yudo declares the fight over. This leaves Noah confused, as the boy represents another country. Without caring, Yudo shouts again that there's no reason to continue. The criminal responds by attacking, saying a spoiled child needs to learn a lesson. Once again, the sword strike hits the protagonist, and Noah screams desperately for the boy to stop, since he isn't a hero. So it doesn't make sense to show that determination to the public. Even so, a hero stands firm and, with all his strength, sends the criminal away. For him, the profession doesn't matter, because a true hero doesn't need a reason to help someone. Hearing that deeply affected Noah, as he had always thought heroism was a matter of class. Asahena, on the other hand, says she was a bit bored but wouldn't mind killing the boy instead of his friend. The protagonist then refuses the offer, since both are already guaranteed a spot in the finals. Because Asahena always saves the best for last, she agrees to wait a little longer. Thus, once again, the winner of the first match is announced. Fortunately, Noah is taken alive to the medical station. Before leaving, Noah calls the protagonist with his last bit of strength, and thanks him sincerely. During the announcements, unfortunately, Yudo is chosen for the next fight. Worried about his friend's condition, Canada shouts for him to get treatment immediately. But Yudo doesn't think it's necessary, and smiles at the blonde, saying he'll use his motto to his advantage. In the seats reserved for the next participants, Max receives a messenger animal telling Yudo to open a specific door. He wonders what's on the other side, imagining maybe a princess is in danger. Seeing the Brit talking to the animal, Canada gets curious. Back in the arena, as the ring is being set up, the announcer raises a question to the audience. Will Yudo be able to fight? Ziru, kneeling, comments that the fights are tough, but he won't take advantage of the injury unfairly. The hero appreciates the support, but asks him to fight seriously. Although the protagonist stopped the bleeding with magic, his right arm is unusable. As soon as the host announces the start of the second fight, Ziru moves at high speed. Contrary to what he said earlier, the warrior's attack is quite cowardly. A teenager yells that it's unfair, and Canada sarcastically points out how obvious that is. Back to our hero's perspective, he dodges multiple kunais thrown at him. Then he wonders what made Ziru change so much. Udo shouts, reminding him to take things seriously, and slams the ground mid-sentence, sending rocks flying across the arena. With great skill, they use these rocks as shields against the enemy's kunais. Seizing the opportunity, Ziru appears from the sides. With a mischievous smile, he says he's an assassin, which allows him to summon endless hidden weapons. Yudo responds that he talks too much, and might not be cut out to be an assassin. Ziru's massive shurikens clash against the protagonist's fists, breaking his weapon, and forcing the warrior to retreat. Acknowledging this, Ziru admits the protagonist is strong even while injured. Because of this, Yudo feels honored, happy to fight against the world's top adventurers. But despite the compliment, Ziru says the game is over. Suddenly, right in front of the hero, a window appears showing a very disturbing video. This is because, at the exact place he left for the tournament, that S-rank Lancer was with his companions. When the protagonist stops abruptly, the announcer asks why. Finally, he reveals he was hired to kill Yudo. After shaking the boy, a strike hits him. With the lives of his friends and family at stake, Ziru believes the hero understands what that means. Even so, the hero's allies don't understand what Yudo is doing, and the others don't care. In the end, Yudo realizes that the Kujo group is truly behind all of this. If it were just about him, he wouldn't care. But the situation changes when it involves someone he loves. While distracted, the warrior takes the chance to chase him and land the final blow. However, something Yudo sees on the digital screen restores his confidence. Just before the attack lands, the hero suddenly turns to the assassin and delivers a strong punch to the stomach. The punch not only makes him cough up blood, but also sends Ziru's body to the ground, zeroing his health bar. Thus, the official winner is Yudo Kiroshima. Burdened by defeat, Ziru questions the hero's decision, since there are still hostages. But the fact is, the protagonist trusts his sister and friends. Moreover, he clearly sees who his trusted allies are. Among them is Koji, who once pretended to be a villain. Going to where Kujo is, the leader of the Abyss Guild faces him head-on. Finding it odd, the blonde asks if he shouldn't be Kujo's pet instead. But those words, said by a man who should be an agent of the US and China, don't mean much. Regardless, the Lancer prepares to attack, saying he doesn't have time for that. And since he'll face an A-rank mage, he smirks and says the boy from the Abyss Guild should hurry up and die already. But to Kijitsu Kushiro, this threat sounds like a bad omen of defeat. Before him, the Lancer asks which side he's on, US or Europe. But in reality, he's Japanese, so he fights for Japan. Kujo comments that finding someone who lies more than he does makes him regret it. Setting that aside, the Lancer says the boy has to die and attacks him. Kuji responds by summoning a virtual keyboard, creating a barrier in front of him. Suddenly, a rope appears, grabbing the blonde and throwing him out of the building. But as an S-rank adventurer, Kujo spins in the air and cushions the fall easily. Even so, Kuji follows him to the street, saying the room is too small for both of them. Anyway, the blonde thinks the rumors about the Japanese being a mage are false, since someone so clever wouldn't have such a common profession. And indeed, it's true, because the Japanese's real job is being a programmer, capable of rewriting possibilities. Since he creates new events with his ability, people end up calling him a mage. In this case, using a spear illusion, Kujo says he can do the same tricks. But confident, Kuji says the adventurer will find out on his own whether it's just a trick, which the blonde thinks is a pathetic bluff. Even so, the moment the illusions clash, one is blocked by a night clone, and the other two are immobilized by binding magic, opening space for the knight to take them all out at once, leaving the blonde extremely frustrated. The strangest thing for him was that the Japanese should have been just a ranked warrior. Determined to win the fight, he charges again, defeating all the clones and stopping right in front of his opponent. Trying to end the battle, the Lancer jumps high, and from the top of a post, charges his weapon with magic. With a look full of hatred, he tells the Japanese to go to another world and hurls the spear with all his strength, making Kauji close his eyes for some reason. At some point in the past, Canada couldn't believe that Kujo Kimitaka had killed his own wife. Even worse, Kujo had served the man who did that to his mother. But for Kauji, that was expected from a vengeance demon, since even his father knew it. Anyway, by placing the protagonist in the Atlantis tournament, the Japanese made it clear he could also launch a counterattack, and that's exactly what he wanted to do now. With a bow in hand, Kuji says he hopes to have a good relationship with the blonde, and shoots a powerful arrow that hits the spear. Suddenly, the arrow deflects the weapon away, and continues on its path, hitting Kujo directly and causing unbearable pain. A few seconds later, the blonde falls to the ground, defeated. With the victory, Kuji announces that he installed a non-violence program in the blonde, so for a while, she won't be able to hurt anyone. Back on the heroine's balcony, the three girls are impressed by how easily such a strong adventurer was defeated. In the end, Suzuka realizes that this is the true power of Supero Kaji. Even fallen, Kujo tries to summon his weapon again, but it doesn't work. Then he gives up, pouts, saying that both he and the hero are lying adventurers, and complains about the worsening strength's reputation. Even so, a message appears declaring Teen as the winner. Back in the arena, the girl jumps on Udub to celebrate, surprising her sister and Serena, but leaving Suzuka furious. In the next fight, Max will face the Holy Knight Canada. But suddenly, a book in the boy's shirt pocket begins to glow, and he laughs, asking everyone to wait a bit longer. Thinking about the next opponent, he believes something very interesting is about to happen. Finally, the final battle of the first stage of the main tournament will be between Canada and Max. The crowd's applause doesn't stop, since both are very popular with the women. Before anything, Max says it's an honor to fight against such a fun opponent. Not understanding what the book means, Canada just says he'll give his all, which Max doesn't care about at all. Then he takes the book from his jacket and opens it, revealing a grimoire full of monsters. With the pages open, the boy summons a giant octopus, just as the announcer declares the start of the fight. Max asks the Holy Knight to make the match fun for him, which excites Canada, despite the terrifying beasts in front of him. The monster quickly prepares an attack, but the blonde dodges. The opponent is a mage, and although that class is common, his specialty is the grimoire that controls spiritual beasts. Therefore, if the boy can destroy the book, he could end the fight quickly. When he strikes, his attack is blocked, surprising Canada, who didn't expect such a fast reaction. With the boy's sword trapped, he is hit by one of the beast's tentacles, almost being thrown out of the arena. Proudly, Brick comments that the octopus is 100% muscle and stronger than it looks, saying, "Now the fun begins." Suddenly, the beast starts transforming into Asahena, leaving the blonde completely confused. Even Lucas is lost, yelling to the crowd that this was completely unexpected. This even makes the criminal herself criticize Max for doing strange tricks. Anyway, the Brit says the blonde is a very interesting person. He asks if the boy knows the octopus's mimicry techniques, and explains that the ritual makes a monster take the shape of the opponent's greatest fear. Then he asks if Asahena is a trauma for Canada, which scares him, but he quickly faces his fear. Their attacks clash immediately, and the blonde is surprised to see the copy's power rivaling the real one. Even so, Canada thinks this Asahena shouldn't be able to use her real abilities. But when he attacks, he realizes he was wrong, as she splits through a portal. And to everyone's surprise, she begins copying all of the criminal's abilities. From the high-floating seats, the strongest adventurers watch everything carefully. Realizing Max was hiding this ability, James begins to piece things together. Then, seeing the American nearby, Amir comments that many in his continent see the boy as a true adventurer. This is because he has a dual profession, just like Asahena, confirming James's suspicion. Amir believes his class is a traveler, literally the only one who can freely move between dimensions. In this case, James understands where all those abilities came from. But he also thinks a simple duel like this could turn into a disadvantage. Although he agrees, Omar says the whole situation is very strange. In theory, a simple mimicry technique shouldn't copy abilities. So, taking a pause, Canada tries to remember everything so far. And after gathering the information, an idea finally comes to his mind. Wasting no time, the blonde slams his sword on the ground and removes his armor without thinking twice, making Max ask if he's giving up the fight. Of course, the blonde denies it and says he's just following his principle. Never run from an opponent and always believe in your own strength. Before the boy can process it, Canada takes a martial arts stance and charges quickly, impressing Max even unarmed. As he advances, the girl's copy manages to dodge a punch, but ends up splitting in half. But Canada shouts that he won't let the octopus escape either. With another punch into the portal rift, he breaks the illusion, hits the monster, and leaves the Brit stunned. With a single punch, Canada knocks down the giant octopus, surprising everyone commenting on the fight. Soon after, the blonde explains that, by mimicking the octopus, he becomes transparent from the waist down. Then, by copying Asahena, only the legs were transformed, and he split each half to simulate the portal effect. To fix this, he just needed to hit the hidden core behind the legs. Close-range punches use vibration and are very effective against creatures with water-filled bodies. After breaking the Brit's strategy, Canada asks who the next opponent is, but suddenly, the guy closes the book and quits without thinking, leaving Canada very discouraged. Amir understands that the guy only likes fighting interesting opponents, so victory or defeat doesn't matter, as long as he enjoys the fight. Thus, the tournament announces Canada Kami as the winner. The blonde tries to ask why the fight ended that way. Then the opponent approaches and whispers something in Canada's ear, which he can't believe, but the Brit insists. Max says goodbye, telling him that until they meet again, he'll leave a gift for him. After accepting it, Canada comments that Max might be more annoying than Udo. The long-awaited first stage ends, and the semi-finalists appear on the big screen. Now it's time to wait and see who will make it to the final. Lucas asks the audience to stay tuned. Meanwhile, Canada, sitting in the floating chair, looks at the gift and promises to win the next fight, especially because he needs it to save our hero. After a while, the tournament begins entering the final phase. The next fight will be between two Japanese competitors, so Japan will secure a spot in the final, but only one person will be responsible for bringing true honor to the country. Now it will be decided who will take on that role. With his companion in front, the protagonist says that the time has finally come. Canada responds that they need to settle this quickly to find out who's the strongest. As the two charge forward, the first semifinal begins. On the first move, the hero strikes the ground, raising a cloud of dust that blocks vision. Taking advantage of the confusion, he throws stones, which the Holy Knight cuts in half, but that was just a distraction for a close-range strike that hits the blonde's defenses. Yudo feels the true strength of his companion, which moves him deeply. He thinks he has to respond with everything as well. Quickly, the hero summons his aura blade, which he hasn't used in a long time, and strikes the knight's defenses again. This time, the knight counterattacks from the right, and for some reason, the system's instant prediction ability fails. By luck or misfortune, our hero takes the full hit, which was exactly the blonde's plan. Soon he'll be able to disable the protagonist's other ability the same way. In the past, while the hero slept, the master asked the blonde to act while they exchanged blows. At that moment, Canada made it clear he wasn't going to lose on purpose, but what she really wanted was for the boy to discover his friend's weakness. So the blonde asked if that battle addict really had a weakness, and it was explained that the boy had already lost part of his strength, which made Canada very curious. The master had already revealed his identity. She said the boy had another wise mentor. It was the Sage of Knowledge, who for certain reasons lost almost all his abilities and barely remembers him now. Thinking back, when they fought the vampire, Canada remembers some strange behaviors from Kira, probably because he was trying to use abilities he had lost, even unintentionally. That's why the master said the blonde's weakness was his strength, but that could destabilize Yudo. Back in the present, Canada doesn't seem very excited to use this strategy, but he advances with both swords imbued with aura. The hero watches the attack head-on, and the blonde aims at the ground, making Yudo wonder what kind of move that was. Like a true mole, Canada digs several identical holes and uses them to move underground. Taking advantage of the holes near the protagonist, he attacks suddenly from below to above. This is the strategy the blonde thinks the hero won't be able to use continuously in his current state. The Holy Knight keeps advancing through the openings and suddenly appears from below, ready for a final strike. The hero tries to understand why he can't react. But there's no time to think, because with Yudo on the ground, Kennedy uses the aerial advantage to attack from above. Unexpectedly, the strike lands before the protagonist can summon his aura sword, sending him flying with tremendous force. But that's not enough for Kennedy, who keeps advancing. Back to the conversation the boy had with Max, Burnett asked if he wanted to help Yudo regain his strength. Without explaining how he knew, he handed over a piece of the book, ensuring it would work. Now, back in the present, with the two very close, the blonde releases the beast he borrowed from Max. Forming a kind of giant bubble, it traps the protagonist inside Canada. Recalling something that once hurt him, Canada comments that sometimes running is also an option. He says that if the hero does that, paths that were previously invisible could appear. Though surprised, the protagonist understands this with a bit of sadness. To explain, Canada says he wants to fight Yudo in the best way possible, and since he isn't in the best condition right now, he wants the boy to take care of himself and run. Yudo begins to feel a mix of confusing emotions. Suddenly, before he realizes it, he's back in that white room. Just like last time, he's not alone. And since the boy returned by himself, the mysterious chained sage asks if Yudo is ready to inherit his legacy. Once fully materialized, the man says it's been a long time since he last saw the boy. The protagonist asks who this person is, as he doesn't remember ever meeting him. Feeling ignored, the sage says he will make Yudo remember, and takes him to a different place, where recent memories are sealed. For some reason, the protagonist only now remembers the death of the Sage of Knowledge. Having that memory surface so suddenly is so intense, it makes him drop to his knees. Even so, the Dark Sage says this is the boy's last chance to inherit his legacy. The hero wonders why he would do that. In response, the sage says that since they are in his domain, resisting isn't an option, and like before, there's no one to save him. This is a no-choice proposal for the protagonist, which becomes clear when the system opens a window with only the option to accept. Still, the sage assures that he won't take control of the boy, and will even restore the powers of the Sage of Knowledge. But since that doesn't convince him, the man asks if the boy knows why he was sealed. He proudly responds that it was because he was very powerful, declaring himself the strongest sage in history. His arguments grow increasingly stronger. Even so, the protagonist stubbornly refuses to accept the proposal. Out of patience, the sage yells that Yudo has no option but to submit. Suddenly, Canada appears outside and places a barrier in front of the Dark Sage. When the sage tries to advance again to pressure the hero, he feels something strange in his body, leaving Yudo confused. It's a trace of the Sage of Knowledge's soul, returning to warn his successor not to give up. In response, the enemy orders the weaker one to shut up, expelling that personality. Faced with this, Yudo asks a question to the presence in front of him. Since they are now allies, the sage says he will answer any question, but the protagonist wants to know exactly what he will inherit from this man. During this time, Yudo learns that sages never lie about the abilities they intend to pass on. So, as expected, instead of answering, the sage tells the protagonist to shut up. Calling him a very annoying student, he binds him with black ropes. But for such a desperate student, the man reveals himself as the Sage of Death, who wants to destroy the entire world. His goal is to spread emptiness to all living beings and wipe out this rotten, disgusting human world. Even in this terrible situation, the protagonist resists. Then the sage tells the boy to give up because he'll never escape those chains. But to his surprise, the boy breaks free. With Meg's magical blessing, given by Canada, Yudo's stats increase greatly. The man can hardly believe something like that could interfere in his mental domain. Now the protagonist challenges the sage, saying he was right to say the world isn't beautiful, because every time he had hope, he was betrayed. Still, Yudo says that sometimes happiness can appear where you least expect it. The sage trembles with rage and advances to attack, saying that one day the boy will fall into the deepest despair, just like him. But the hero replies that to think like that, he must have trusted something, which freezes the sage in his thoughts. Because the protagonist's conviction exceeded expectations, a seal is unlocked. With it, a shining golden light appears, telling the boy to take everything for himself because this is his first and last gift. The protagonist's hair turns yellow and seems to burn like the sun. The Sage of Death asks, "What's happening?" Unfortunately for him, it's just Yudo reclaiming what is his. With the Aura Sword summoned again, the protagonist advances faster than ever. Facing the sage, he thinks that one day he wants to save him, because actions like this are what will make Yudo the adventurer he wants to become. After a precise strike with his new powers, the gates on the ceiling reappear. In an instant, the Sage of Death's possession is undone, and he begins to be sucked back into confinement. When the gate closes and everything starts to disappear, our hero holds the Sage of Knowledge's body, who thankfully awakens safely, leaving Yudo happy with his return. Back in the real world, Canada bravely raises a shield to protect our hero from attacks, angering the audience. Ting tries to help, but the chairs have an emergency isolation system. The attack was launched by the rank S adventurer named Raiden. Since the tournament was nearing its end, the coup group panicked and spent a fortune to hire an assassin. So a rank S assassin continuously attacks the blonde, who can only endure the pain for the sake of his friend. Suddenly, with another shot, the Sacred Knight's shield breaks. While many in the audience watch, the assassin declares this will be the end. He launches an even larger projectile at the Sacred Knight, which explodes in the center of the arena. But along with the explosion's light, a distinct golden glow appears, bringing hope back. Yudo returns to the battle. He immediately thanks Canada for protecting him so much, but now they need to recover. The protagonist says he can defend himself alone. The United Arab Emirates spent a lot of money and devised various plans during the qualifiers, sending assassins, but the strongest cards were kept for the end. That's why the strongest adventurer from Russia, Raiden, capable of surpassing even James' firepower, was sent. But what irritated the businessman was that even so, the mission was still incomplete. Back in the arena, just before the barrier fell, the announcer looks at the sky and asks what's happening. Shortly after, he identified himself to the operations team as Lucas and requested that the match be stopped and the chairs unlocked. However, since the system was controlled by Atlantis, they couldn't do anything. Then came the first explosion from the helicopter assassin's attack. Raiden praised the Sacred Knight's endurance, but declared that it was all over now. He launched an even more powerful projectile. Since the adults were present, James and Amber stepped forward, causing the projectile to explode right above them, setting off a fire visible throughout the arena. Tian was extremely worried, thinking something might have happened. Even more so because it was explained that during the fight, anyone in the chairs couldn't use their abilities. Raiden, on the other hand, just laughed, having accidentally defeated some of the strongest men in the world. With that, there were no more obstacles, but that wouldn't have been true if it weren't for the protagonist, who appeared in a beam of light with a new transformation. After thanking his friend for the protection, he announced that he was ready to fight. Within seconds, our hero created a giant arrow and aimed at the helicopter to pierce it. The Aura Spear was launched at the rank S adventurer, and in an instant, the helicopter split in half, exploding completely. Meanwhile, Kuji was handling other issues, watching the hero from afar with great satisfaction. After all, now he could finally say that the sub-commander's son had awakened. At some point in the past, in a distant place, 3 people were facing a flying monster. At that time, there was a level A dungeon invasion, called Amaterasu, and the expedition leaders were Yudo and Yudo Kiroshima. Koji, still a teenager, was worried because no rank reinforcements would appear, leaving the others as mere sacrifices. Even so, he shouted, asking to join the group, since he couldn't stand still after the captain's death. This outburst made Yuke scold Koji, saying that precisely because he cared about the adventurer system, he needed to stay alive. At first, Koji didn't seem very happy, but his expression changed when he was asked to take care of the child. That day, Magisa revealed that the child was born with enormous magical power but couldn't control it, so they had no choice but to seal him for the time being. On the right day, when the child was ready, the parents asked Koji to guide him on the right path. Fortunately, back in the present, the Abyss Guild leader's power wasn't necessary, since Yudo handled everything on his own. For some reason, the nearby Lancer also asked what was happening for the hero to be stronger. Then Koji explained that this was actually his original power, which had been sealed. Something like hidden potential, similar to what appears in a popular anime. Now the two need to fulfill their responsibilities. For that, Koji kicked down a door and came face to face with his father, who shouted, demanding to know why he was there. The blonde replied calmly that it had been a long time since they last saw each other. Koji mocked him, saying he thought the boy's role was to witness the father's end. The CEO was furious seeing the two traitors together, but the son replied that it was a misunderstanding. Koji had never been on his side, not even for a second. At that moment, agents from the International Guild Administration Ministry appeared for crimes of illegal interference in Atlantis, along with multiple murders. One of them declared Kimitaka arrested. Though deeply distressed, he understood it was the end. In the past, an employee had questioned the president, since the dungeon belonged to his wife's guild. But he didn't care, because besides being too much for her, they shared ownership of everything. More than that, the plan was to send her to the next dungeon. If everyone died, it would be considered an accident. Desperate, the businessman started running. Before the others could act, he jumped from a high window, even injuring his arm and part of his chest. Ku appeared, saving his father by grabbing him by the collar. But it wasn't out of kindness, since the boy wouldn't let Kimitaka die so easily. Not before making him pay for all the sins he had committed up to that point. In the end, the businessman was taken away by the agents, and Ku commented that it was quite a dramatic ending. But Ku replied that it was only the beginning, pushing him into his father's chair. As for the meaning of this, despite all the sacrifices the boy made for revenge, his punishment would be to work for others in that company. Of course, Kuji refuses to accept that. But at that moment, Kuji remembers when he said the two would have a good relationship. And more than that, he reveals that he installed a program in the blonde to ensure he couldn't escape the position of president, which crushes Kuji's morale. Back in the arena, our hero comments that Canada really crossed the line, and the boy responds that being reckless isn't Yudo's only trait. Max, in turn, runs to warn Canada to rest, because he can't fight with those injuries, something the blonde already knows, but he still has things to resolve. For that reason, a warm healing energy suddenly envelops Canada's body. This was a blessing from Atlantis, so that the fight would end fairly, which was a relief. Then, Canada suggests that the loser should grant a wish to the winner. Yudo agrees, since he had always wanted to continue adventuring with him in the same guild, which coincidentally was exactly what Canada had asked him to promise if he won. Thus, with this fight, they would decide who would leave their own guild to join the other. As the two face each other, the blonde asks if the hero remembers the days they fought repeatedly during training. Yudo responds that he does. For the record, it was 0 wins and 999 losses. To cheer up his friend, the hero says that the Sacred Knight's role is to protect others. But as a sage, he also shouldn't be particularly skilled in martial arts. Either way, the blonde doesn't want to use his profession as an excuse. And even if the hero tries, he says it's something he can't accept, and Yudo understands that. So the two prepare to start the fight, and Lucas announces that the first semi-final was interrupted due to technical issues. It continues now, with both players wanting to proceed, but Lucas notices something. Suddenly, a giant tree sprouts on the north side of the arena. One theory is that Atlantis wants to watch the conclusion of the battle between the two. Seeing that even the masters are present, the boys know they can't perform poorly. But our hero apologizes because he's determined to secure his 1000th victory. Not wanting that to happen, Canada advances, their weapons clashing. At that moment, the hero senses through instant prediction that he will be pierced in the next move, so he dodges by leaning back and counterattacks with an upward kick. As the two balance on the arena floor, the blonde asks if that was the sage's instant prediction. With a smile, the hero says yes and thanks his friend for helping him regain it. Even so, the hero feels a bit guilty, since that power was borrowed from his predecessors. Meanwhile, Canada fights his own battle, without relying on his profession, so the protagonist decides to do the same, knowing he can't stay in his comfort zone. Otherwise, he won't meet the opponent's expectations. If 1 or 2 attacks come, Canada is confident they'll be predictable enough for him to counter with multiple patterns. Even from a distance, the hero feels that just predicting the future isn't enough. So, as a sage, he focuses and calls upon his ability to anticipate the future. This new skill is called the butterfly effect, offering multiple possibilities for different actions. Using it, after analyzing many options, the hero summons a shield. With this, he stops the Sacred Knight's advance, causing him to hit a metal plate and lose some health. Moreover, he is launched backward by a strong strike. Even in the air, the blonde doesn't give up and throws his swords. He begins chasing them, and since they target the protagonist, he advances into close combat using 3 different attack forms. Then he yells for the protagonist to come at him, and Yudo responds that that's exactly what he wants. With great determination, the two warriors exchange punches, reducing their energy bars to critical levels. Then an explosion occurs, kicking up dust, and leaving everyone anxious to see the outcome. In the end, the blonde swords were seen in the sky, and fell to the ground just seconds before their owner, the Sacred Knight, also fainted. Thus, by a narrow margin, the winner of the semifinal was Yudo Kiroshima. Lying on the ground, the blonde begins reflecting on his 1000th defeat, but he soon accepts his fate, though he says using a shield isn't really the protagonist's style. Yudo replies that, ironically, he hadn't used a shield until then, because it was a painful reminder of the past. However, Nami understands that it was thanks to his past self that his current self exists. Canada, on the other hand, doesn't grasp the meaning and simply extends his hand. The hero smiles and invites his friend on an adventure together, which Canada gladly accepts, since it had been agreed upon. With that, only 2 matches remain in the main tournament. First, the fight between Asahena and Teen begins as the second semi-final. But as soon as the announcer declares the start, the pink-haired girl is attacked from behind. The protagonist group is shocked, and the situation is critical, as Teen doesn't even have time to defend herself. Being a criminal, Asahena doesn't hesitate to tighten her grip on the girl's neck until things start going badly. The announcer is so surprised that he has to compose himself before declaring Asahena the winner. Even so, he shouts for the competitor to release her opponent. But despite the fight being over, Asahena seems unconcerned. Once again, the protagonist is forced to intervene, launching an attack in the arena. With Teen in his arms, He recalls having already said he would face her in the final. Driven by anger, he orders the criminal not to hurt anyone not involved in the fight. With a mocking smile, Asahena apologizes, saying she hadn't even realized she had already won. Without wasting time, the hero asks Canada to take the girl to the medical team. Before leaving, the blonde calls Yudo again, just to wish him good luck. Thus, the finalists of the Atlantis tournament face each other in the arena to settle their differences. Back at the Angel House, the girls explain to Suzuka that the teleport device only works in one direction. Serena then asks if she still intends to go, knowing she can't return the same way. Suzuka agrees without hesitation, just imagining what her sister might be doing. After all, if she doesn't go, she believes Asahena's fight will never end. With everything ready, the criminal comments that the battle can begin. If she wins, Yudo demands that she apologize to Teen for what she did. Asahena questions why he cares so much about that weakling, since she's already on his side. There's nothing left to say. Lucas announces that this is the final battle. Whoever wins will become the King of Atlantis. The fight begins with the world's full attention on them. Summoning his aura sword, the protagonist charges furiously, declaring that Teen is not weak. Asahena also draws her weapon, laughing loudly at having made the hero so angry, until the blades clash. Unexpectedly, the protagonist's weapon shatters hers. Asahena then acknowledges Udo's strength. She admits that she admires strong people. While trying to defend herself with everything she has, a memory of a little girl flashes in the hero's mind, leaving him confused. Even so, Yudo steps back, dodges another strike, and defends himself as she advances. Once again, the girl's image appears in his mind, revealing that it's Asahena's past. The memories show the day she was taken by corporate executives. They also reveal the suffering she endured as a test subject for greedy scientists. During the fight, Yudo feels how painful it was for her to be trained as a warrior from such a young age. The worst part is that her own family continued the training for the money it generated. In the end, all of Asahena's suppressed emotions overflow through her blade. The memories show when she visited her sister, even after everything. After escaping that hell, she felt awful for becoming a fugitive. Back in the present, the martial arts master asks what is distracting the protagonist. Even the Sage of Knowledge notices that it isn't a good sign. With his awakening, one of the Sage's abilities has been inherited. This ability allows him to see the enemy's past and identify their weak points. But knowing the protagonist's kind heart, it only makes him more compassionate. Asahena grows irritated with his attitude. When he gets the chance, he shouts that she never wanted to fight, which makes her uncomfortable since they barely know each other. Upon hearing she should never have had this power, Asahena laughs, believing she needed it from the beginning. She wanted a power no one could take from her, a power no one could ever violate. Even so, Yudo grabs her arms, realizing she's just scared. In the past, someone had already used her emotions as a weapon against her. Asahena throws Yudo backward. She starts having a panic attack, trying to convince herself that if she couldn't get what she wanted, everything would be taken from her. Between suffering and determination, she manages to refocus. As she looks at the protagonist, a dark energy begins to emerge from her chest. Then Asahena smiles as she finds what she was searching for and charges forward, demanding the protagonist surrender. Suddenly, she opens a portal right in Yudo's chest, thrusting her hands deep inside and reaching the Death Sage's sealing gate. There she begins to drain all that power until it's completely exhausted, absorbing it into her own body and causing an unprecedented explosion. The force is so great that it shakes the clouds in the sky. Amid the fire and destruction, Asahena emerges in a new form. Moreover, the power comes with several useful abilities, making her wonder why the hero never used them. But it's not like he could explain at that moment. Without delay, the girl summons her scythe, ignites black flames, and tells the boy to shut up, saying that if he lost after talking so much, it would be pathetic. Soon after, she uses her dimensional portal ability, and from within them, black claws erupt, attacking the protagonist from all sides, forcing him to flee desperately. He shouts that keeping distance won't solve anything, but with another strike, she hits him hard, slamming him face first into the ground. To make the scene even heavier, a sudden rain begins to fall, and the hero loses even the strength to maintain his aura sword. With her eyes fixed on the screen, Asahena waits for the system to confirm her victory. However, with her black flame scythe, she also cuts the broadcast showing everything to the audience, leaving only destruction worthy of a globally wanted criminal. In this world, Asahena desires nothing but the disappearance of everyone. Since defeating Atlantis grants total control, she believes she could destroy it as well. With this power, she no longer has to worry about prison escapes. After all, she could end everything alone and inevitably kill everyone. Still conscious, Yudo, with his last strength, says that she can't do this. With a look of pity, he pleads for her to awaken from this state. At that moment, he recalls telling the Death Sage that he once believed in something. Because of this, the seal on the white room gates breaks, shattering the chains that bound him, until the Death Sage's soul is finally freed. Long ago, in a certain country, a devastating plague spread, collapsing the nation and surpassing any healer's abilities. A man began studying magic to end the disease. He dissected corpses, conducted experiments, and even tested on himself. People feared him, believing he was possessed. Soon, rumors spread that he was the true cause of the plague. In the end, he was called the Death Sage in his final days. He was killed as a witch by the same people he had spent his life trying to save. Thus, he died cursing the world, forgetting his original goals. Deep down, he only wanted to bring hope to those who suffered, like a great rainbow in the sky for everyone to see. Back in the arena, seeing the hero's state, Asahena says he is pathetic. But since he is still alive, she thinks that's good, as now she can destroy him completely. Suddenly, as she walks, she feels a touch on her foot. It's a small lost soul, begging her to return what she took, saying it was all it had. Asahena asks if it is speaking to the true owner of the power, and the soul confirms, pleading. After thinking for a moment, the girl questions why she should do it. Instead of complying, she frees herself from the soul's claws and stomps on it, demanding it repeat the request. Screaming, she asserts that the power is now hers. She stole it and has no obligation to return it. She continues asking the reason for the request, and with a threatening look, wants to know if the soul also intends to take something from her. Even though it was being mistreated in every way, the soul keeps pleading. Exhausted, the girl lifts her scythe and coldly refuses before attempting to annihilate that consciousness. Yudo, unable to watch any longer, gathers his last strength and dashes at high speed, circling the girl to save the Death Sage's soul from being destroyed. This enrages Asahena, because even at the end, Yudo still interferes with her plans. The soul, meanwhile, looks visibly confused at receiving help so unexpectedly. It asks why the boy did that, since there was nothing left of it there, but the hero responds that isn't true, because when her power was stolen, he saw the sage's memories. Then, Yudo asks the Death Sage to remember what still exists within him, to recall everything that was forgotten over the years. Yudo points to a light, and the soul follows it almost instinctively. The moment it looks inside, it sees the reflection of who it once was, awakening a wave of emotions within itself. Yudo states that the Death Sage surely experienced feelings stronger than anyone else, so intense that they consumed his heart, just as is happening now with Asahena. Regardless, Yudo asks the soul to ask the question one more time, because now he wants to inherit the sage's true path. With that, the sage finally begins to remember a bit of who he really is. He joins his hands, and a powerful multicolored energy forms a barrier around them. Asahena tries to stop it, but the light becomes too intense for her to approach. Suddenly, even the skies are filled by the fusion of the two, leaving the martial arts master impressed, as the lightning before everyone is that of the Rainbow Sage. Meanwhile, Asahena begins to be consumed by the power and screams, asking what it is. The protagonist simply advances toward her, cutting everything with terrifying speed. Asahena is completely destroyed, shocking her. She doesn't even notice the moment it happens. Still, the criminal opens her portals, determined not to give up, but the protagonist summons multiple aura swords. Using the technique called Thousand Swords, he destroys all the temporal rifts, leaving the girl deeply shaken. In the end, her main weapon still remains intact at the edge of the arena. She runs to retrieve it. However, the protagonist anticipates her movement and creates a rainbow in her path. At that moment, just as she's about to reach the sword, Asahena is thrown backward by the rising rainbow. She would have collided with a fragment of the psychic blade when hitting the ground. But to prevent that, the protagonist rushes at high speed, grabs her arms, and saves her from being impaled. Instead of thanking him, the girl becomes furious and pulls her hand away, asking if he's trying to save her, and if that's the case, she repeatedly screams that she doesn't need any of it. Consumed by rage, she raises her hand to cast a spell. Invoking a massive energy sphere, she declares that she will destroy everything, leaving Yudo stunned. But at the last moment, someone else appears on the battlefield. Before the girl can unleash her final revenge attack, it's her own sister who appears before her. This inevitably makes the criminal hesitate for a moment. Suzuka stands right in front of her, asking what she is doing there. Before anything else is said, the protagonist seizes the moment, dashes like lightning alongside his companion, and thanks her for creating the opening. Then, without hesitation, he delivers precise strikes to end everything once and for all, demonstrating overwhelming power. And that brings us to the end of the story. If you want a continuation, comment for part 2. So that's it. See you next time.